Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the planning board meeting this evening. Thank you for coming on out on such a nice day. We have a few orders of business to attend to before we start our meeting, and let me just proceed through that very quickly. First of all, it's my pleasure to welcome John Trudell tonight, who's going to be joining us as an alternate to the planning board, so welcome on board. Yeah. You have an agenda before you, members, and we're going to make one change to that agenda, which is the first thing on the agenda will be the letter regarding the alteration of the layout of Orange Street dated July 23rd, 2015. With that change, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda as submitted. And do I hear a second? Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Mr. Burns, on that note, I think I'm going to put you up first here to talk about the Orange Street layout, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it's written in the letter on page 252 of the packet, the County Commissioners request the Planning Board to make comments and recommendations regarding the alteration of the layout of Orange Street. This was voted at their July 22nd meeting. As part of an eminent domain process. The county has scheduled a public hearing on August 19th to hear any of the comments and to close the eminent domain process. The county asks that the planning board make the recommendations and comments by August 12th. This is all per Mass General Law 4181G and I, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the project. As you know, this is for the first phase of the in-town bike path project, which does affect a small portion of Orange Street between Goose Pond Lane and Spruce Street. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Do you want to? Yeah.
Is this the piece in front of our Chavez you're talking about?
Clarify that, I'm sorry?
In front of there, is it the piece in front of our Chavez house?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's the only part that we're changing, the layout? Isn't it temporary for like a year or two or something, and then it goes back?
These are permanent easements that are intended to alter the layout of the plan. It affects 7 different property owners, including Mrs. Charter.
Okay.
Thanks. Questions? Go ahead.
Every time I drive by there, I have more and more of a problem with this. But we're just looking for easements at the moment, right?
Correct.
We're not constructing anything yet.
Correct. This is all for the assembly of the right-of-way necessary to implement the project.
Are people going to be going, the bike's going to be going the wrong direction against traffic?
Absolutely
Also?
not. The intent is to have the bicyclists travel on the edge or to the right of the travel lane in either direction. Within a 4-foot wide bike lane designated solely for bicycle traffic.
But what I'm saying is when they come out of, coming from Washington Street, they come up Goose Pond, they get to Orange Street.
Correct.
The guys going out of town are going to cross.
They will be required to cross over to the southern side of Orange Street in order to make it down to all of their destinations down at the end of Orange Street.
And how are we
towards
getting
the
the
Rotary.
bike path over there? Because those things are pretty tight to the front.
Well, the cross-section of the road consists of 2 11-foot travel lanes, but there's going to be 4-foot shoulders on either side of those travel lanes.
We're gonna be
So
able to
there's
get it
not
on that
necessarily a
side?
bike path.
Right, not a bike path, but a travel lane.
Correct.
And we're going to be able to get it on the south side from Hatches and everybody else going out?
I'm not sure if I followed the question. As part of a future phase of the project? Correct. The intent is to carry the cross-section down towards the Milestone Rotary.
Okay.
Anyone else?
'Cause I tell you what, Barry, my only concern with that is that I know in the Mid-Island overlay we don't like anybody farther back than 5 feet on the setback because we had so much parking issues in front of the buildings. But we may have an issue with not allowing some, because there's a couple of new structures that are going to be going in further towards the Rotary on the south side. And we may want to rethink this no further back than 5 feet if we're going to be sort of moving the curb around or lowering the curb like it was too high now. But you know what I'm saying? It would give them a little room between the front of the building and the bike lane, where I don't think we anticipated that when we did the 5-foot no further back setback in Mid-Island, because this isn't the only place we're going to look for those bike lanes.
Okay.
Right. Mr. Chairman, so it's the 5-foot maximum setback is what you're referring to.
Yeah, front yard.
The key, where most of these easements, there's a tiny easement on the north side. Most of these easements are being made up on the north side. So there's no new structures that I know of. He's on the south side.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, on the south side.
Right.
We're going to be able to do it.
So all these easements are being made up on the north side of the road. So the south side is staying pretty much where it is.
And some of those guys are, right in that little strip there, timber and lumber, are really close to the street.
That's where the easements. So the easements are between, if you look on the map on page 253, it's between Spruce Street and the Goose Pond. That's where the main easements are being taken. So the extra width in the roadway is being taken on that north side. And that will continue until we get up to the point where it gets, the right-of-way gets
Much
wider.
I'm just worried about if somebody decides they're going to ride their bike against traffic coming in without
That's
bothering.
it's going to be very hazardous for them.
Yeah. Doesn't mean they're not going to do it.
That's so true, given some of the behaviors we see nowadays.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad this summer.
Anyways, anything else from the board? The only thing I want to say is I did go to the county commissioners meeting as well as did Mr. Lowell, and I would urge the board to adopt this and sign the document as submitted, because I think this is a good step in the right direction for making some things happen in that area. Hearing no other comments, suggestions, whatever at this point? Okay, so the motion is to sign the document with a positive recommendation.
Is that the motion?
I believe, yep.
Are you going to make that? You're not? Oh,
All right,
okay.
so that motion is made. Do I hear a
I'll make
second?
the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, so the motion's now made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so let the record reflect that's a 4-0 vote with Linda abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike.
The FCC has to get involved on it.
Okay. Yep, we're going to go back to the front. So, that's going to bring us to our public hearings at this point. There are several which are continued for the evening, which is 7716 Valero Road subdivision on Old South Road, the 7771 White Elephant Hotel LLC on Easton Street, Brotherhood of Thieves on 23 Broad Street, and what's that? Is
Surfside's gone too.
I'm sorry. That
Yeah, you just skipped it.
no 46 Surfside Road.
Yeah.
Just got an form today.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Continue.
Yep, and yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute because we need to just kind of clear the deck on that the right way. Right, but they're here to formally request that that be withdrawn. Yes, sir.
Is 46 Surfside Road continued to September's meeting?
I'm gathering that. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the applicant, I'd just like
Yep.
to confirm that we've requested it because there was a traffic issue and we're waiting on the traffic report, so we didn't feel it was appropriate to move forward till we had that reported. So we'd like to extend to the September meeting, and I think we need to file an extension in the office tomorrow.
Okay, great.
I was just going to say, you're extending, Mr. Cohen, the action deadline as well?
Correct, Mr. Burchard?
And to when, October or November? Or?
Let's say October 31st.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So there you have it. So 2415, which is Russell Simpson, there's a request for a withdrawal at this point. And I take it that's without prejudice?
Without prejudice.
Okay, that motion's now. That's you. That motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great. Yeah, if you don't mind, we're going to skip around just for a minute. South Valley Industrial Park, did I hear that the applicant wanted to withdraw that?
Yes.
Okay, so
A motion to allow withdrawal without prejudice
And-
in South Valley.
Second.
motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you for allowing us to clear the deck a little bit. That brings us to 2515, which is the Isaiah Athletic Club on 86A and 88 Old South Road for the applicant.
Stephen Cohen for the applicant, Mr. Chairman. So I think last time we had a good review of the engineering involved, and I think this time we'd like to cover a few other issues. One is I'd like to show you the HTC approved plans, which we think are sort of long and low and keep the facility essentially hidden from the road. We're happy to answer any questions about those if you have them. Otherwise, we can just leave them up there.
Okay. And you've done,
I'm just trying to find it.
that's okay, and you've done the Mullen thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's good.
So the other issues we want to try and cover tonight are the planting and landscaping, which we view as a screening from your perspective, as well as the uses and nuisances, essentially noise, light, parking, those kind of things. So the plan is, now that we have the HCC approved plans, we have a lot of everything sort of flowing from that. So I apologize that we don't have everything for you in the packets in advance. But I think we have the new landscaping and layout plan here, and I'll go through for you that our current calculation, which we'll submit in writing, is that we need about 8 spaces for the 4 underground squash courts. 1 per 2, 2 per court. That we need 1 per treatment room for the spa, which is 8 treatment rooms, so 8 spots. The gym is hard to calculate because it's actually a huge space, but we figure it's going to have about 50 pieces of equipment, and we're estimating, or we're proposing 1 parking space per 3 pieces of equipment. So at 50 pieces, that would put you at 17 parking spaces. For the pool, we're pulling the 1 per 100 square feet of surface area that you use for the Westmore. So the pool is currently proposed at 80 by 40, which is 32 spaces. There's also a smaller hot tub spa pool that's about 700 square feet, so that's another 7 spaces. There's a dwelling, a 2-bedroom dwelling that's 2 spaces, and that's the management dwelling. It's not a dorm or anything like that. There's the turf field in the back, which we're estimating at being used at up to 10 or 12 people. So we're figuring that at 1 per 2 in the same way that the courts were done. So that's 6 parking spaces, and then we figure there could be up to 25 or 30 employees at peak shift. So that's 10 parking spaces. That's 90 parking spaces if we follow that formula. We are proposing providing 73 compliant parking spaces with 18 overflow spaces, which I'll show you in a second, which is 91 spaces. Here in the plan, basically all following here. These are all compliant here. And then there's this extra 2 in here. And those are, if you can see it on the plan, those are essentially compliant size, but they're stacked inside. And we don't anticipate that on a regular basis those would be necessary, but during events, those would be additional overflow parking. And there's a potential for overflow parking in the front, but we'd rather not put it where it's visible from the road, but it certainly could be. But, I see Linda shaking her head. We didn't think it was where anybody would want it either. You can see there's a fairly heavy, densely vegetated buffer around the building, around the facilities, that there's a lot of open space and green space, and that essentially most of the activity is inside. The pool is about as centered on the property as it could be, and the turf field used to be 5 feet from the property line, and we've swung it in. If you just look at scale it off based on the parking spaces, the closest corner is 20 feet away from the property line, and then, I don't know where it is on the other end, but it swings way in on the east side. So we've tried to create some open space and vegetative buffering from everything. We anticipate that the most likely location for hosting events would be on the turf area behind the pool, and that facility could be used in essentially 2 scales. That if there was an event that had 100 people or less, that it would essentially be the same people using the entire outside area. So we wouldn't necessarily need more parking because we've already calculated that parking into the pool and spa and outside area. So instead of having the parking for that, it's the parking for the event. So it's essentially the same people using that back area. If we had an event that was more than 100 people, and we figure we could do up to 250 people back there or more, but just using that as a calculation, That puts you at about 83 parking spaces for that many people if you calculate it the way dining is done. And if we had that, we would basically shut down the facility. So then you're having a double up of those against the entire facility. So again, you're at 83 necessary parking spaces, but we have 73 plus the 18 overflow. And at that point, we would propose a condition that if there was an event with more than 100 people, that we would have a requirement for attended parking and for off-site parking and shuttle service or that kind of thing. We don't want the facility to turn into an unpleasant experience for the neighbors any more than we want it to be for customers or for users. So we would propose that if there was an event for more than 100 people, that we would put in a condition to require that, or that you would put in a condition to require that. And we've also proposed limiting any of the tented events to 10 per year, and that large ones would only be in the shoulder season. We also have proposed, what?
How many?
10 per year.
And what about the shoulder?
Not in July and August, basically. That larger events would only be in the shoulder season. We're proposing that amplified music would be, or any amplification exterior, would end by 10 o'clock, and that any events would end by 11 o'clock. We are proposing that any exterior use of the facility for regular activities would end by 8 p.m., and that any interior activities would end by 11 p.m. I'm happy to take questions or comments or suggestions.
Board members?
As you know, the hardscaping hasn't gone to the HDC yet.
That's right.
But on your map and on this map, I see this little, is it the kidney-shaped thing? Is that the kids' pool?
No, it's an adult hot tub spa.
What are these four little things there? Are those structures?
There are like umbrella-type cabana things.
If they're structures, they're in the setback. They're at 0, almost. So I didn't know what those were. Little cabanas? They're absolute structures? What's happening?
They're like umbrellas, but they're more than 5 feet from the setback. They certainly would be in the final plan, if they're not now. But they're just shade for seating.
The handicap spaces don't look large enough and don't look code compliant, so I don't know. That's up to you guys, but they don't look it. I am not in favor at all of having any overflow parking in front of that house between it and Old South Road, at all.
On the south
I don't care if that's grasscrete, which is what that looks like, some sort of a grasscrete type structure.
No, we are not proposing any there. I'm just telling you that we considered it and didn't decide to go for it.
So I can cross that off?
Yeah.
I appreciate the structure. Obviously, I've seen it several times elsewhere. What I don't see here, you're going to have food service in this place, correct?
No, only sort of. There is going to be no kitchen at all.
Okay.
There will be food prepared off-site that will be available essentially in little takeout containers that if people want to have a salad or whatever, they can enjoy that. But there's no takeout service for non-guests, and there's no cooking at all.
No catering kitchen?
No catering kitchen.
Okay, because I'm just looking, there's no loading zone. I think you're going to have a tough time getting one in here.
No, there would be a refrigerated case where someone would prepare food off-site and come and put, little to-go containers in the refrigerated case.
Okay. There'll be no events during the July and August. I assume we're talking weddings in May, June, September, October? Or what's happening in July and August?
Oh, well, I think what we're currently proposing is none of the larger events in July and August.
What does larger mean?
Well,
to me, it's 10 people more or more.
10. Well, you're going to be more social, Linda.
No, I got enough social during the week.
We're proposing that an event of 100 people or less doesn't really change our parking calculation. And once you break the 100 people, we're proposing to essentially shut down the club and have it switch to a different type of parking calculation. So that's where we're drawing the line, but we're certainly open to how you view it.
So you're saying 100 or less will take place in July and August, but only 10 overall for the entire year?
Correct.
I'm having a little trouble with 100. in the summer? Because it is RC2 still, and it's basically a permitted use, and you've worked through a lot of it with the HDC, but I'm still concerned about the surrounding residential.
Yeah.
I sent you guys the email
Yeah.
that we got today.
And just to respond to that, we came up with that number partially based on how it works with the parking, but also based on sort of the relative disturbance of what would be there anyway. You know, when we have the facility, that kind of an event, you're talking about 10 or 12 tables. It's not a huge event.
What's the membership of the club total?
We're proposing 250
That's what I thought.
members.
Somebody in here asked, is that family memberships or is that individual memberships?
Yeah, yes,
Family?
families.
Okay, so the potential is there for a lot more. Do we need to deal with the tent issue here? Because of the permits on the tents?
You mean the zoning issue?
Yeah.
Well-
Because you're only allowed to have a tent for so long and has to be up for only so long and all that other stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is because it's a commercial facility. This would be compliant.
So you don't need any special relief for the amount of time you're going to have a tent up?
No.
Okay. On these events that are 100 or less, you're going to keep the gym open?
Yes.
And you've calculated sort of your maximum in there inside the facility as well as the ones that are out using the event?
Yes. I mean, the building, even though it's really big, houses very few people because in reality, you've got 8 spa rooms that are unlikely to all be in use at the same time. You've got 50 pieces of equipment in a huge area that's unlikely to ever have 50 people all using each piece of equipment all at once, and the food service area or the food area is really for people who are already there doing something else. So that building tends to have a lot of empty space in it.
So, I mean, obviously we can reopen it if it turns into a disaster for one summer. We can reopen it and just sort of revisit the events, the size of the events, the parking issue.
Yeah. I think if my clients were bad neighbors, you would very quickly do that.
We're going to hear about it. Because I think it's a great location for it. Exit and entrances, we talked about this way back when we were over at the HCCs, only off of Old South Road.
That's
You're not
right.
going through Egan. A lot of people still think you're cutting through on the easement that you have access to. But
Yeah, the proposal, and we would expect it to be a limitation in the permit, would be that we have two-way traffic onto Old South Road, and that we would have a rumble strip before the bike path, and that we would have sightline improvements at the bike path and at Old South Road, and that we would have the use of the Egan Lane easement only for deliveries and trash and that kind of stuff, which is, as you know, much less than the intensive use of the landscaping contractor use that goes on there now.
So the public is not using the Egan part of it, just
That's
the
correct.
trash, the dumpsters, I take it, on that side?
Yeah, the dumpsters.
Because I don't see them really called out here.
They're right there. You see it? There's a black square here. You probably can't see it.
I see it.
Just to the east of the Egan Land entrance, there's a black fenced-in box big enough for the dumpsters. We don't anticipate creating a tremendous amount of waste, but you still need it.
It is what it is.
But again, there would not be public membership through traffic through the neighborhood.
Lighting, which obviously the HCC hasn't seen yet, but all down lighting, low
Yeah,
lighting, ground lighting.
Ground lighting and safety lighting consistent with the Nantucket Dark Skies policy, and no nighttime lit up activities that would involve exterior lighting.
Like nighttime tennis and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
right. Nothing like that. No
Because I think
lighting.
we need in there, in the decision.
No lighting of courts and fields.
Yeah, we need to address that. No lighting of the court, no lighting of the turf field.
Correct.
Unless, everything you're going to be doing there is usually going to be under a tent.
Yeah.
But
Standard safety exterior gown lighting.
So I think that brings me back to one of my biggest issues. Trying to, make it a good neighbor, and you've got property that's fairly close to it. 11 o'clock is late. I know out in the Badlands when somebody's having a party out there, you can hear a pin drop. We are all on the phone at 10:05. Got to tell you. because the noise ordinance is 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And a lot of people rely on the fact that it's 10 o'clock. And I don't know what the situation up at the Westmore is, but I dare say that if they were running around making noise outside, somebody's on the phone at 10:01. So I'm kind of concerned about outdoor activities till 11 o'clock, even for events, because everywhere on the island at 10 o'clock you got to shut down. I've worked a lot of these events, and we're shutting down at 10 o'clock for the most part.
Well, I think that the events usually have the amplified noise ends at 10, and the events usually end at 11. I think that's fairly
They
standard.
can still go after you at 10:01 if they can hear that noise from that event.
Not for voices. The
Ambient noise going past the property line, believe me, I go
Yeah.
through it every summer in our neighborhood. We
Yeah.
all know it like the back of our hands.
you,
10:01 you can call if there's too much noise coming out of there.
not. I mean, I don't want to debate it with you, Linda, but the human voice, there's no limitation on it. It's the limitation is on amplified sound at 10 o'clock, and we are not seeking any waiver of that.
Well, just know that I'm having an issue. The regular activities, 8 o'clock, I think that's reasonable. Amplified music, definitely, because I can tell you right now, I know every single bride that's gotten married at Jacques,
Yeah.
because it carries. And I know more than I ever wanted to know. But things going to 11 o'clock is a big concern for me.
Okay.
That's really my biggest hoorah, except for the parking in front of that house. So.
Right. Well, what we figure is that the music would turn off at 10, no amplification after 10, and the event ends at 11, which I think is fairly standard. But, I don't have a vote, so.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to probably die over this because we can reopen it if we start getting a lot of complaints. And I'd like to know after the full summer of operation, which would probably be next year, how many noise complaints have been made.
Sure.
Because we've asked that of the West Ender. Who else? We've asked that of a couple of other venues that are right next to residential zones.
Yeah.
So I'm still concerned about it. But if we sort of revisit that one issue.
Yeah. I think for the commission to put in, or for the board to put in a requirement to report back, a year after opening on these issues is an entirely appropriate condition.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
No. Mr. Marklinger?
Oh, I was thinking, what about ending at 10 o'clock
Yeah.
in July and August? Just a thought.
What was your thought, sir?
That you'd end the events at 10 o'clock in July and August.
Well,
Can,
we'd like 11, but we can certainly consider different options.
Well, because they're going to be small, they're going to only
The
be
smaller
100 people.
event.
They're gonna, anyways, and July and August is kind of the noisy time for everybody.
Yeah. I think we don't expect the commission to make a decision tonight, and we won't. But that's certainly something we can discuss and come back with you for the next meeting. It's not. It's something we can think about.
all right, so hold on. Mr. McLaughlin, go ahead.
I'm going to be short and sweet on this one. Just tonight I received this letter from a neighbor which has questions. I would like to, the next time you come back, I'd like you to bring back answers to these individual questions in writing so that I can peruse them.
Is that Ms.
Right now,
Ms.
there's
Bunting's letter?
16
Bunting?
Yes.
Yeah.
About 16 questions here, and
Yeah.
I like to, I believe in listening to neighbors when there's a problem,
Yeah.
if there is going to be a problem.
So I think that I've addressed
let
most
me
of those
finish,
issues,
please.
but I'm happy to do it in
Let me
writing.
finish, please.
So, yes.
Thank you. It's hard enough. Yes, I'd like to see answers to all these questions and submitted before the next meeting.
We'll do that in writing, sir.
Did you have something, Carl? Go ahead.
I'm uncomfortable with 11 o'clock as well. It's a flat area out there, and there's residences around pretty much all the way around. And I would say that I would be comfortable for amplified music ending at 10 o'clock and the events ending at 10 o'clock in the summer and in the shoulder seasons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Nat, go ahead. I can.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
We're going to continue this?
I don't think we're ready for it quite a decision tonight, but I think we're getting real close to the truth here.
Okay.
Let me,
it's just one of those halfway ones. We're going to they're going to be able to open the public hearing.
right.
This is sort of like, a West Ender fresh start situation where we've got RC2 zoning in a residential neighborhood that every person out there knows it's RC2.
Yeah.
This land has been sitting here since the beginning of time, waiting for something to happen. It's just, it's just the way it is. You can't get rid of commercial zoning just because you don't like something.
Yeah.
We'd like to change RC2, but this is a tough area to fix. I think that if you want to come back with conditions, answers to John's questions, which are vague, you've answered most of them in this letter, but already with Linda's questions, really, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I think the reference to the Westmore Club, I don't have that decision to look at. Like to say, okay, what are they doing at the Westmore Club? Because there's a lot of references to it in the letter.
Yeah.
But that's a fair comparison. It's the newest facility like this on the island, really. But this is much smaller than that. They've got a lot going on up there. They got swimming pools all over the place, tennis courts. It's huge, and
They have a full restaurant.
they have two. Okay. 2 cooking facilities, plus catering, plus parties, events. The tent thing, we did go over that last meeting, and I couldn't remember what we talked about, but I think you addressed that before, that you can keep a tent for the whole season under RC2. Is that correct? You said that earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but do you have to have a permit for every time? No, but the tent can stay up with a permit is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In other words, we're not going back to take it down, put it up, take it down, put it up for every single thing.
But
It doesn't matter.
I think I'll respond to that in writing.
I just want to be sure
that it's more clear.
what we're voting, so everyone's clear about the tent, because that's going to be brought up by neighbors.
I agree. I think what we would do is so that it's clear for everybody what you're actually going to be voting on is to put it in writing for you, so that we don't have anybody coming back later and saying that we weren't on the same page.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I don't want to be pushy, but I think that, we've heard your concerns. I think that we can get fairly close. If the commission would perhaps consider directing the staff to work with us on drafting a positive motion, we could start working on a list of waivers and conditions for your consideration at the next meeting.
Yep. That would be good.
That would be my motion.
Okay.
Carl, go ahead, and then I've got something I want to add in here.
I neglected to mention that I don't have a problem with pretty much everything else is covered in my mind,
Thank you, Carl.
except for that 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So I have 2 questions for staff. Because sometimes I think our recollection of things may be a little bit fuzzy at times, and you guys are usually pretty much in the loop about seeing the more holistic picture of Nantucket. So 2 things. The tent that was brought up, why do I have a sense that we can talk about it, but we're in the wrong forum here, not our purview? Okay. Let's see who the clearing authority is for doing that at this point, and let's get that on the table. And the second question I have for you, let's talk about events over the course of the island for a few moments, and what pretty much the emerging standard has been. So, if you don't mind, Andrew, just to get a sense of things on a much bigger scale here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, with the 10 issue, I think Mr. Cohen's suggestion to get that in writing, so there have been some bylaw changes, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page on that. So
Okay.
by continuing it, we'll make sure to address it in the
Good.
decision. In terms of events, I'm trying to think. We had different standards sort of come out at different properties. I'm thinking the West Ender. Eventually, we didn't allow any events there because of the closeness. The Westmore. There's, it's custom made according to the settings and the surroundings. So, I'd have to take a look at our specific. Nothing jumps out at me.
I think the yacht club, the new yacht club, doesn't have an event cap?
They do.
Yeah, the Yacht Club, the Westmore, there are several event caps. I know that the West Ender was not successful with that, but I think it was tied more to their septic issue or their Title V issue limiting the amount of tables and seats they could have. I was somewhat involved with that. I think that was, there was the noise and the neighbors too, but they really had a seating issue under their Title V.
And Mr. Chairman, I think
Yeah.
the main difference between this project and some of those is that there's not a grill room, there's not a dining room.
Right.
I mean, those were like the big drivers for parking requirements on other projects. So the planning board included conditions, if the grill room's open, then you can't have a private event. If you're having a private event, then you have to close the grill room. And that's not really an issue here. The parking demand's a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah, we are intentionally not having a restaurant because we don't want to drive that kind of traffic and that kind of activity. It would significantly increase the traffic and noise and smells and other nuisances.
Okay. Because the other thing that doesn't fail me too, Mr. Cohen, is you are sitting in a commercial corridor at this point, Old South Road.
Yes.
Okay? I understand there's residential, but the character of Old South Road is commercial.
Yeah.
So let's be a little clear here. I think you guys do want to be good neighbors because I don't think you want to be coming back here in any way, shape, or form. And I think there'll be a happy median that comes out of this. So as one member of this board, I'm willing to kind of let you run with the ball for a bit and see how it begins to flow because, like I said, this is the last place you want to be coming back to at this point.
I agree.
And so I'd like to think common sense will prevail here, but I also want to set the tone, too, that where you are located at this point happens to be a mixture of the two things, but the characteristic of itself, like I said, because it was all RC2, turns out to be commercial along that strip, and it will continue on that venue, especially along the very face of Old South Road.
Sure. It is the most commercial area on Nantucket, and with the plans in front of you, is only going to be more so.
Right.
And frankly, the residential development of this lot under RC2 could yield enough houses and second dwellings and third dwellings and pools to create quite a nuisance to the neighbors too. So this has a lot of benefits. It's going to be really quiet most of the time. So I'm happy to work with staff to prepare a list of proposed conditions, to do an assessment of the other clubs, so you would have a comparison to see, how you've treated this in the past, and happy to build in a condition for us to revisit this in a year on some of the nuisance issues. But also, I 100% agree with you. The last thing we want to do is be back here because of complaints. That never goes well for the applicant.
Right, and frankly too, I hope in that analysis you'll look at things like the downtown core district as well too, where we've dealt with the Brotherhood, for instance, which abuts right up against residential, yet there are hours of operation for that, and there's always something going on there as well too. So I that's what I'm saying to you. I think there needs to be a little more of a holistic approach.
Yeah.
To looking at this. I conjecture worries me and cherry picking worries me at times a little bit about these things. So
Right. Well, I know you sat through the hearings about the White Heron Theater. They did the tent for 2 summers, and it ended up being not a peep, no complaints. It was I think very successful, and I appreciate on that project that the board took a little bit of a risk with us. And I hope that when we revisit this, you'll be glad to see that there are not complaints and that we were good neighbors.
Right, which I'm sure you have a manager of record and all that'll be
Absolutely.
well established for the neighborhood to understand how to be able to access someone directly. I have no doubt about it.
Unlike the Westmore or Great Harbor, the manager of record is going to be living on the premises.
There you go. Okay, great. Is there anything from staff at this point? No. Anything else from the board?
I'm good.
Okay, this is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, so if anyone would like to comment on this, I'll ask you to please come forward. Okay.
I'll make a motion to continue to where in September?
14th.
September 14th, and to work with the applicant on the
Start.
draft.
Yeah, a draft positive motion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Yep. So that motion is now made and seconded for discussion. Yeah, 14th. No, 9/14, John. That's their action deadline. That motion is now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next thing before us at this point is 26-15, Richmond Great Point Development LLC, 1, 3, and 5 Grigland Ave.
I just don't want to go discussing really. There's technical things.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it. Mr. Arminetti, good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Rector, board members, staff. Dave Arminetti, for the record, Director of Development for Richmond Great Point Development and the Richmond Company. With me this evening also is my colleague Patty Raghaveen, and with us also is our local counsel, Attorney Reed, who has assisted us in this application as well. Glad to be before you again. To your deference, Mr. Chairman, I'll briefly take the board through some changes that we've made since your last meeting in July in response to board comments and staff comments to hopefully refine this proposal. That's
Great.
okay?
Please.
We made a handful of changes. The current site plan that's up on this board to my left, your right, reflects what's in the package this week. There were a handful of changes, the most substantive of which were one site plan change and one engineering change. The site plan change is the inclusion and revision of the middle of the site plan to allow for both of the previously separated parking areas to be interconnected with about a 30-foot long connection drive aisle that now allows for full circulation through the site from Gregland Avenue to Nancy Ann Lane and vice versa. We simply relocated the proposed refuse dumpsters to either side of that road as opposed to offsetting that road. That was the major site plan change that was requested by the board and the staff, and that we found could be readily achieved, and we think it makes it a better plan. So we're certainly in agreement with that. The other change was more technical in response to a handful of comments by the town's consulting engineer, Mr. Pesci. We made a few changes, the most significant of which was adding a couple of Cultec infiltration units to our subterranean infiltration system to bring the entirety of the site, even a small area in the middle of the site that had previously potentially been in the 100-year floodplain, completely out of the floodplain, and then another 4 or 5 changes that Mr. Pesci had suggested. So that's really only the only changes we've made. We're continuing on a parallel process with the HDC and are making progress there. Other than that, we've seen the draft decision and participated a little bit in the draft decision formation that was before you in this week's package, and are certainly believe that's appropriate, would be ready and standing by to comply and abide by those conditions if the board so sees fit. Other than that, I'm glad to answer any questions or offer that if the board sees fit to close the public hearing and take some positive action on this application, we would look forward to start building some much needed rental housing on the island as we've indicated. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Board members, Carl, go ahead.
Mr. Arminetti, you got rid of the barbecue pads?
Oh, yes, I'm
Sir?
sorry. Should I comment on that?
Just curious.
Mr. Chairman, through you,
Yes,
sorry, I forgot to mention that. Another feature. The board would recall one of the abutters in particular was on the record at the last hearing with respect to those 2 features, although I will say 3 of the 3 abutters that we specifically met with that are the most adjacent abutters on the block face behind us on Lover's Lane all had the same comment in reaction to those. So in deference to them and to try and accommodate them, we've eliminated those entirely. We didn't think the chance for noise intrusion and loitering was great, but we thought it was probably substantial enough to try and accommodate the abutters, and we don't see that being a negative to the site plan or the project.
And your playground's gone?
Correct, that as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Go ahead.
Why is the playground gone?
For
They're
similar,
not near anybody else. I mean, even when we did Essex, there's a playground at the end of Essex. Some of the other subdivisions have done it themselves, some quasi thing. Or why did you get rid of the playground? They've got nowhere else to go except into traffic.
Similar reason, because of the request and the reaction of the abutters. We're certainly anticipating that we're going to have larger, more usable open spaces further east in the area once we develop the entirety of our residential portfolio, and perhaps that can be a more appropriate location and more substantive location for that.
Talking about the upside, the other area.
Towards Cedar Crest and across Nancy Ann Lane to the east towards the airport, yes.
Because I know you had something when the original plan, I saw something up there.
Yeah, I mean, it was anticipating maybe some tot lot equipment or some small toddler type equipment. Nothing of any huge substance, but again, we are trying to defer to the abutters and be a good neighbor here, and thought it was discretion being the better part of valor, if you will.
As long as they have some yard somewhere. But another question, if I'm reading this correctly, and we all just got it, looks like several of the spaces are off-site, quote-unquote, because they're not all, because of the way it's laid out, they're not all on, each lot has their own exclusive.
Correct.
It looks
Maybe
like
I
they
should-
sort of, everybody's sharing spaces. The reason why I'm asking that, Andrew, did they ask for off-site parking?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know what these sections are. I just see a bunch of 18s. I didn't know if they got off-site parking, because we've had that issue before. Okay. I think it's a perfect location. I like the way the two on the north side are gable end to Old South Road. I think that minimizes the appearance of them. So in order to get a real good close-up of them, you're going to have to be actually on Gregland Avenue. I like the idea of a little bit more green space without the pads. Not much, but it's something. And Leslie, did you do this one, or did you and Andrew do this today? Is that how this got here?
Yeah, Dave submitted it. Dave Arminetti, and we reviewed it.
Okay, and you're okay with it?
Yeah, there are a few just really minor technical changes that aren't substantive
Okay.
that need to be made, but.
And the way that the parking is described, is it that plan, or is it the old plan? I just want to make sure what's in here is what you're proposing now as far as circulation. And I don't know if that's what that is.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it is. The current site plan is what's reflected both in terms of the plans referenced in the draft decision and the applicable conditioning. Just to clarify, we're not asking for off-site parking off the entirety of the site,
No,
just
just
within
some
the
of
individual
these-
lots of the site,
Some of
which
these
is
spaces are overlapping.
fairly technical.
Okay.
But it does require a special permit in accordance with the bylaw, as you've noted.
Okay. Just from past experience, as we've seen on a lot of the duplex lots on the 3 roads out there and in Essex, I know they have 2 extra spaces. If you're in a 1-bedroom, you're only required to have 1 space for the 1-bedroom units. As we all know, a husband and wife or a couple, each one has a car. How much more overflow can we get in here someplace? I'm just worried that, because we've seen it time and time again, that we say, under the bylaw, this is what you have. But your teenager gets a car, you got 3 cars at that point. I don't want it spilling out onto Gregland. You haven't really planned the big lot between you and Old South Road yet. I just didn't know if there was any other way to increase the parking or have any auxiliary parking. Because if it doesn't work and there's not enough parking, then we're all going to be back here. So I didn't know if there was a way to, I know for technical reasons he meets it, but for practical use, we've all seen the problems.
Go ahead.
I just want to be clear on that, though, that at the time of some of the projects you mentioned, the parking standard was 1 per dwelling unit.
Or 1.5 per something.
No, it was only 1 per dwelling unit. So full duplexes were built with 2 parking spots. So that's been changed now. So it's 1 parking spot per bedroom, which is what we're meeting here. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We're exceeding it by 2 spaces,
By the
as
2.
Ms. Williams noted.
I just think they may meet it. As you and I know.
I just don't, Mr. Chairman, through you, I
Yes,
just
please.
don't want to overbuild because, yes, that's true. one bedroom could be rented by someone with 2 cars, but, you know, a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom could be rented by someone with 1 child and 1 kid.
Right.
So I think we want to be careful about not programming in too much parking. If parking is a problem, the board can reopen the hearing at any
Right.
time, call them back, and ask for more parking to be installed.
Just keep that in mind, because this is an absolutely new concept for Nantucket. It's the best location for it on Nantucket. I mean, it's going to be on sewer, it's going to have everything, all the utilities, it's got NERDA, I believe there's one right almost in front of it now.
Yep.
So I think it's a great location, has a bike path, so I'm really happy. It's alien to anything on Nantucket, but I don't know why we think that everybody needs to live in a single-family home, because that's not happening and that's not reality. So I'm very pleased to see it. We have to work out, obviously, the aesthetics at the HDC, but it couldn't have been in a better location for it to try it out and see what happens with it. But just sort of keep that in the back of your mind, that if the parking doesn't work because you own all the surrounding pieces, you just sort of have to think about that before you start developing as you go down Gregland too far. I know there's the 3 duplexes going in just past it. So otherwise, I'm very pleased with it, and Andrew, I don't see a lot of conditions on this.
Yeah, did you? Andrew, go ahead. Did you have something?
Well,
before we
one thing we might want to just make sure we put in as a condition is, you know, that there won't be extensive on-street parking around the development.
I agree with that.
And there'd be no parking between the building face and any of the surrounding roads. So,
All the parking will be on the interior.
correct.
Okay. Ty?
Yeah, just, this type of application is new to me completely, and I've been trying to figure out some questions, and one of them, since the HDC has not passed on any of this, I was wondering, when they state that they will have 28 rental apartment units, and the building will look like such and such, if that number of apartments don't fit into this, to the way the building ends up looking, does each apartment square have to have that amount of apartments in it, or will it be based on what the building looks like in finality?
Mr. Chairman, through you, to address that question, I believe that's been essentially accommodated in the draft decision. Number one, I think the most important thing, and I'll certainly defer to the staff, is that the maximum and the limit is capped, and that's what's most critical. If by chance, whatever review subsequently by the HDC requires us to go down some number of units below 28 and reallocate them through the building somehow, I suppose that could happen. I think it's unlikely, highly unlikely, I would say, based on my experience. But we have included a provision that says if there are some changes required in conjunction with the HDC review, as long as they don't go over some threshold, no further approval from the planning board will be required. So I think what that allows us to do is shrink and move around a little bit, kind of without invading this prospective approval, and we're certainly comfortable with that if the staff and the board is.
And what would be your threshold?
Oh, I don't know that, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that I put a number on it. I think we'd have to go down quite a few units before the building envelopes would really start to be impacted. And again, I've only been here for a little over 2 years, but my sense is I don't think the HCC would make changes that would be so radical that would really change the number of units, if at all that much. I'm quite comfortable with where we stand in terms of how this decision may be conditioned relative to future HDC review.
I just wanted to make sure that what we were covered and the number we were working with.
Sure.
Thank you.
I promise we won't come back for more.
That's good.
Not really.
I might disagree. That's
I
fair.
might too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, on this site, let me caveat
Well,
that. I'm
no,
sorry.
I know on this site, but like I said to you before, Mr. Armadetti, it doesn't fail me how critical a need this is, and boy, am I glad that you guys have stepped up to the plate to do it. So I would hope with any other boards that you appear before at this point, that function over form here has to take the precedent. And I think you guys are trying to do a tremendous job here. I can't laud your praises enough at this point, and wish you the best with this. Thank you. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything else? All right. So, you good, Andrew, over here?
Yes.
With staff? Okay. This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. Would anyone like to comment on this? Not seeing anything? No?
Motion to close the public hearing.
And do I hear a second? Second. Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hold on just one sec. Before I do that, I'm sorry.
Who are you activating?
Yeah, because, John, you missed a meeting, I believe, on this?
He left before.
Yeah.
That's why
And you
I'm
didn't-
on it.
Okay. Because I'm...
So it's Joe, you, me, Nat.
And Diane's
And
been here
Diane.
for all of them? Okay, I just wanted to check through Catherine. Okay, great. No, I just had a feeling that I wanted to bring that
I
up.
didn't
All
hear
right.
all of them too, but
Pardon?
you only need one, right?
We only need one at the moment, but thank you. Appreciate it. There'll be other opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
So-
John, you can ask questions if you, okay.
No, we already talked about that. He knows. He knows.
Just I'm hanging out over there.
Door's way open at this
All right.
point. So, all right, the motion is to close the public hearing. It was seconded. Any further discussion? Not hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the previously stated conditions about all parking will be interior and no on-street parking.
Okay.
Correct. Second.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none. All
And to be
those-
signed in the office.
Of course. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Next thing before us at this point is 32-15, which is Greg W. Glowacki on 21 Gregland Ave. For the applicant. Howdy.
Teddy King. Just here to represent Greg Gowacki's if you have any questions. He's doing a covenant subdivision on a lot on Greg Glen. Any questions?
Thanks. Board members, anything? No? Anything from staff? No?
fine.
This
Yeah.
is, pardon?
It's fine, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, at the last board meeting, there was an A&R plan to divide this lot into 2 lots. Now
Right.
the 2 lots is going into 4 lots because of the secondary lot program.
Right. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing at this point. Would anyone like to comment on this?
I only have 3 lots on here. On the new one.
There's another plan.
There's 2 plans.
I'll give you a second while you do that.
I believe Catherine passed it out at the beginning of the meeting.
I have 3 lots here and 3 lots here. Just different.
She, Pat, yeah, it's there.
It's 2 and 2. She's
We didn't get any 4 ones either over here.
Hold.
This is the one I don't have.
All right. It was part of your handouts that you had. So, let me just make sure that we're all locked on the same page here. Hold on, just patience with me.
Oh, I might have.
Does someone want
Still
to?
don't have 4 on any lot.
Thank you.
It's a little bit confusing.
It's, you have to
have
put
to put
these
them together,
together.
right,
You gotta
so-
put C,
Because what's missing is that.
That's on a different plan.
I
So
know, but it should, all 4 lots should be on one plan.
it's 2 different permits. He's going to get 2 special permits.
Okay, but you see what my confusion is.
I,
Each time I moved, I had 3, but different configurations.
Oh, this is peacock.
Oh, thank you.
I was trying to do it separately.
I know. But this makes me happy.
And that's what it's all about. All right. Do you guys need to see this as well too before I?
We don't
All right.
have it.
Can you
Here.
just do me a
Just
favor?
pass it on down.
Thank you.
yeah, well, that's a hot potato there.
It is.
And then pass it right on back to Teddy.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
believe the plans were submitted this way to provide some added flexibility to the owner in the event he decided not to pursue one of the 2 divisions under the
Makes-
special permit.
Perfect Makes sense. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, was anyone wanting to comment on this from the public? Not seeing anyone?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Motion is now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion to grant up to 4 lots. Is that where I'm going?
No, I don't think that's the right motion.
What do you want me to say here?
I think motion to approve the special permit to create a secondary lot on each of the 2 lots formerly known as a combined 21 Gregland Avenue.
Right.
That's my motion.
Okay, that motion is now made, and do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion was made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Next thing before us is 33-15, which is Michael S. and Nancy D. Peacock, 46 West Myacomet Road. Mr. Reed, good evening.
Why?
Can we reserve comment till at least Mr. Reed gets up here and talks? Guys, thank you. Mr. Reed, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application in the Moorlands Management District, which is why it's before the Planning Board, even though we're dealing with basically alteration of pre-existing non-conforming structure, which would ordinarily be ZBA business. We're proposing to replace the existing house with a new house without any increase in overall ground cover. The setbacks, which are non-conforming because this lot pre-existed Moorlands Management, are either staying the same or getting more conforming. Nothing is getting more non-conforming. In the past, when we've dealt with issues involving the Moorlands Management District, concern has been as to whether anything that we would be doing would have any adverse impact upon the environment in the Moorlands Management District. And for that purpose, we have engaged Brian Madden of LEC Environmental to advise us with regard to that. We have him here tonight. We didn't get report in time to submit for the packet, but he has a report which we can give you. But meanwhile, he can present his findings. Brian?
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
I do have some additional copies of the report to submit, but Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, Wildlife Scientists. The letter that's being passed around just basically summarizes how the redevelopment has avoided and minimized impacts to the surrounding environment. The existing property sits within a little pocket of residential development. There's about 12 homes within the surrounding area. There's existing dwellings immediately to the west. The proposed redevelopment is largely configured in the existing footprint of the existing house. It's the same square footage of structure. Any additional work activities around the existing structure occur within either vegetated areas occupied by invasive species primarily, or salt spray rows. An application has been filed with the Conservation Commission. We are proposing to restore any temporarily disturbed areas surrounding the proposed structures with native species. There's no manicured lawn areas or other extensive landscaping areas. It's pretty tight to the proposed house. Erosion control barriers will be installed to consolidate and maintain the work limits. And we are proposing to have down-directed lighting on sensors to avoid attracting additional wildlife in this neighborhood.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know there's a limitation on when you can move the house out, because I know where the house is going. And I know that there are limitations on construction certain times of the year, so you don't disturb something flying around out there?
The notice of intent application has been submitted to the Natural Heritage Program. If they require time of year restrictions, those will need to be adhered to.
I go way back, as Arthur knows, probably 30 years with this property. When it was at the ZBA and we had to have a mediated settlement, it was Christmas time, I'm on the phone conference call in New Jersey, settling this whole thing between us, I guess the selectmen, I guess everybody else involved at that point. And the house has sat there minding its own business for over 30 years. So removing the house, giving it to a young couple, and then replacing the house with very similar in size and height and appearance to the existing house, which is, you don't usually see that. I think this is, I don't see any negatives to this, frankly. You've got other boards, other entities you have to deal with. And I'm sure like the last time, they'll deal with them. And the Peacock family has owned this property for a long time, and I believe the one across the street as well.
That's right.
I don't have an issue with this at all. If it was getting larger, getting taller, moving around on the lot, but where you're putting it is already disturbed. So out it goes, and in comes a new one, and that's the end of the story as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any big issue here.
There was a lot of question about the whole zoning history of the thing, as you know, back, as you say, 30 years ago. Are we admitting to that? But in any
Way
event,
too long.
it's quite a while. And as you say, we're dealing with a situation where it's been stable for a long time. Nothing's really changing in terms of the overall impact on the area.
Good. Di, did you have a question? Oh, Carl, go ahead. Sorry.
I apologize, sir. Are you Mr. Madden?
Yes.
I'm curious, after reading this last night actually at home, are you at all concerned, I don't know if this is your purview, but are you concerned about flooding from the flood zone X line there, which is fairly close to the deck on the south side? I understand there is a fairly large dune there. Is there any kind of contingency for a 25-year storm, 100-year storm on the south side?
We'll give you another member of our team, the engineer, Don Bracken.
He's jumping up.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Bracken.
The actual flood zone, FEMA flood zone, is by the coastal bank, elevation 9. Flood zone X means it's actually not technically a flood zone. So we're not really concerned about that. We would be concerned about groundwater and possibly spiking up in the event that there was a flood. But groundwater, we did a test pit 13 feet deep. We didn't have any groundwater, so we don't expect any issues with that.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Staff, any questions? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this. Good evening.
I'm Sarah Little, and my
He
family...
needs you to come right up to it.
Thank you.
I'm Sarah Little, and my family owns 42 West Mycomet, which is, we call it the shack. It's the tiny little house at the corner of the pond, and it's in between, they're the house just to the west of us. And anyway, I reviewed the plans that were submitted online last night, and I didn't see a height listed on the plans. And I just came here tonight to find out. I know the square footage, the footprint's the same of the house as the house that was previously there, but I wondered about the height because it's pretty visible.
You're going to get an answer from the engineer in a moment here.
Also, you can go look at the actual house plans that were approved by the HDC at the same Plus office, but just go to and get the HDC file because they have all the elevations to it.
Mr. Bracken.
Yes, to answer that question, it's 24 feet 7 inches from grade to the peak.
Could you compare that to the current house for me?
I don't know exactly what the current house is, but it's a story and a half, and the proposed is a story and a half, so they would be roughly similar.
It's within a couple of feet of the original house because the HDC looked at that as well as to how the profile looked, and it's very similar to the house that's there now.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Not seeing anyone else, board members?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second? Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Motion to
Ayes have-
approve.
Thank you. And do I hear a second? Motion's made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Next thing before us are 9 ANRs at this point. Board members?
Is there anything, through the chair, is there anything on these that staff needs to comment on, or are these all a go
We recommend endorsement.
of all of them?
I want to ask about one.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Let's
The,
pull out whatever we need to talk to here.
The Washington Street one? 121 Washington Street?
7856
Yep.
Kershaw.
Yep.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah.
What's going on? A chunk of Washington Street's getting conveyed to the,
This is a piece at the end of Washington Street, near where it turns into the railroad bed. And there was a town meeting article that authorized a portion
Okay.
of that.
okay.
Yep.
Then I understand now.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. So back, please.
I'll make a motion to endorse 7852, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and 60.
And do I hear a second to that? Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. That brings us to second dwellings at this point. There are 6 second dwellings before you at the moment. Is there a wish to isolate anything out for discussion?
Yeah, I'm out on the first one, Oak Hill.
Okay, so board members, is there anything
Oh,
else?
there's another one.
There's an
Yes.
issue with that one.
The Sagaget Avenue. Stephen Jennings and Mike and them.
okay. You need to
Yeah.
recuse from that too?
No,
Oh.
I have a comment on it. Yeah. There's a,
All right, so let's just go through these
Okay.
individually then. I'm
Okay,
so
that's
sorry.
fine.
So, Oak Hill Investments, 4 Harborview Lane. Mr. Markin's going to recuse. Yeah. Linda, did you have something on this?
I'm having an issue with the secondary dwelling, quote unquote, on this lot.
Yes.
In reality, Harborview Way has not been taken into and given to the abutter, which owns both sides of it. It's not a secondary dwelling. We went through this at the HDC meeting. It is a freestanding primary dwelling at this point because they are not merged. And they can't merge because the layout of Harborview Way still bisects them.
Right.
And so when the HCC was looking at it, they were trying to say, well, it's this, this, and this on the secondary dwelling and all this other stuff, and we're going, we can't do that because it's not merged yet because you haven't given it to them yet. So we're having a little bit of an issue with the HCC with the separation as well because they originally had a cabana and a pool, and we're going, no, it's a separate lot still. So the secondary dwelling, it's not on the same lot as the primary house because we have approved all of the structures there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I
Mr.
don't know
Chairman,
what to do with it.
Yes.
just so you know, there's been some extensive discussion about Harborview Drive and its status. So
Right.
I want you to review the site plan, though. It's on page 139.
Mm-hmm.
So all we're talking about here is Lot 4. There's some, what Ms. Williams is talking about is there's some other property adjacent to this, which is going to need some, page 139?
Yep.
Does everybody have it?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, this is the other one.
All right, can we let,
One farther,
can I let
they're
him?
still split.
Right, can I let him finish up though?
Right. So we're talking only about
Number 4.
the outlined property on page 136,
Yep.
and the property that you're referencing, Ms. Williams, is
Number 5.
4320
Yeah.
to the west of it.
West.
And
Okay.
we are working with them on a possible subdivision modification and something else because they do not have frontage for those back lots.
Oh, they don't?
So there's going to have to be other action by the board in regard to development on those back properties.
And I did point that out to them, and they said, oh, no, we can get rid of it. And I said, oh, no, you're getting rid of your frontage. You're going to have to go talk to you. So,
Right. And we've explored a couple of different options, and I haven't heard back from them. But on this particular one, we're all set for the one property.
Okay. Theoretically, Andrew, they could T-zone it and get rid of the piece that separates it from this pool.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I suggested that.
Yep. We've
Okay.
also looked at an extension of Harbor View down to Brewster from the existing point.
Yeah.
So that would
Okay.
give it its...
From the other direction. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have any more issues with it.
All right, so board members, what's your motion
I'll
at
make
this
a
point?
motion to approve Oak Hill. Andrew, you're comfortable with them improving Shimo all the way out?
That's been a standard requirement for
Yeah.
anyone there.
Yep.
The only thing
That's
I was
the
worried
nearest
about is
road.
that it does become, the GIS maps are still wrong on a lot of the streets. Shimo, really wrong.
Yep.
They got rid of Monomoy Road in a whole section all by itself. They got to fix that, because what leads up to Harbor View, is that now Brewster or is it still Shimo? I thought it was Shimo all the way down, and every map we've got right now says Brewster.
There-
comes in after it.
There has
No,
been...
that's how you get to it.
There's
Yep.
been some sort of error that's occurred
Overlay.
in all of the GIS maps. I've noticed that a lot of the streets are misidentified.
Completely.
So what's showing there is Brewster is Shimo. Brewster is down here.
Brewster's parallel to Harbor View.
Yeah.
More
Correct.
or less.
Yes.
Over
exactly.
there.
Off Shimo.
Yeah. Now, the length,
Oh, yeah.
Andrew, that they have to go from Pulpus Road to Harbor View is what, a quarter mile? Because
Maybe.
it gets really narrow and you can't even pass each other at some point. But I don't know if anybody out there, we went through this before, want to cut back. But why, we have to pull over into driveways now to even get past each other before you even get to Harbor View.
Part of, just for information, part of it's only 20-foot layout as well. The first 400 or 500 feet, I think.
But
Right.
you're down to about 8 feet of passable at the moment. You want them to go ahead and give us the 12 feet?
The brush needs to be cut along there.
Yeah.
After
Insanity. Well, after Juniper.
It was cut, right, when it was cut with other people providing second dwellings on Middle Valley
Yep.
some years ago, and it has grown back. And
Amazing.
that's how we
So we get a cut.
have some maintenance done on these
We
roads.
tried to get, didn't we try to, a couple of years ago, something on North Road was going on, as I recall. You know, the little connector piece out there. And
That's getting pretty narrow.
And
It's just there.
I know we tried to get them to do what we did on Squam, where they take care of themselves, they make turnouts.
Right.
You have to pull into Rooney's driveway to wait for a truck coming over the hill there. I mean, it is bad, but it's after this that's bad.
Right.
Just before this needs to be fixed, but the worst part is after Harbor View. So, I don't,
All right, I'm not finished with this yet. My only question here is 3, 4, and 5 don't make any sense because the road dead ends at this driveway. It seems a little excessive up there because if they get rid of the rest of Harbor View so they can combine that other lot into one lot, number 5 into one lot, this is really excessive because you're the only one up there.
No, there's other
No,
buildings.
they dead end right there at them. The other building is farther. I've been up there a billion times for the HDC.
There's 4 properties,
Yeah.
Before
each
it.
one with a second dwelling.
Yep, before
and
you
other-
get there.
Right.
And, I mean, this is only saying the driveway has to be cleared to a width of 12 feet. 12 feet is pretty minimal, considering this is a road.
Well, the 20 feet is what concerns me because the neighbor across the street didn't want any cutting. We can go there another time. But 20 feet, the sight distance is nothing because there's no sight distance to the left.
This
and
is
to the right, there's no sight. You don't have sight distance because nobody's coming to you except you.
This is at the intersection, so it's basically 20 feet in either direction.
Well, it says 20 feet of that driveway in Harborview, not the Harborview in Shimo, which is fine. But that driveway in Harborview, you are that driveway. Harborview is that driveway.
I think number 3 means Harbor View and Shimo.
I see.
Well, it says driveways intersection. It says
Yep.
clearly driveways intersection, which is why I'm confused. Shimo for sure, because you got no visibility coming out of there.
Well,
So can that say Shimo intersection with Harbor View, the 20 feet? Because I think that's kind of critical.
Yep.
I had a hard time getting out. Okay, so that's Shimo. Passed it.
Is there anything else?
No, I think that's the only issue.
All right. So with that now addressed, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve with that change to number 3, to
Okay.
Shimo and Harbor View intersection.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Andrew?
Yes.
All right. That motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously, and let the record reflect Mr. Martinger abstained on this one. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Okay. Recused. Sorry. Next thing before us at this point is SUS Family RT, 10 Parson Lane. Is there any discussion by the board at this point?
I'll make a motion to approve SUS per staff recommendation.
Do I hear a
10
second?
Parsons Lane.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Next thing is Stephen Jennings and Monica O'Neill, 1 Soxer Avenue. Were you recusing from this, Mr. Martin?
No, I wanted to make a comment on it.
Second.
Please.
The site plan
Yep.
is stamped by an architect, and it ought not to be. So,
I do.
there you go.
Page 148.
You give, that's the site plan.
That's the site plan. Yes.
Oh, well,
I don't know about that, but anyways. All right, so, sorry.
I've seen this at the HBC ad nauseum, so I'm familiar with this. They had to make a few tweaks to it at the HBC level to get it out of setbacks, but it's out of the setbacks.
no, I'm not worried about.
No, I think
I'm
his-
just worried about, he ought not to be doing this type of work.
Are you looking at the stamp?
I'm looking at the stamp is the architect's stamp.
Right.
Yeah, I could see it.
You gotta go back.
Well, no, I would look,
He can
somebody's
tell.
stamp, I
No, I know.
looked to see whose it was, and I saw it's an
Yeah.
architect. So just get a new site plan that says, not him.
He did take the actual stamped site plan, engineer's site plan, and put this stuff on it, because I saw the original plan.
No, I understand, he even gives credit to the original surveyor, which is something, but he didn't, he's not a surveyor.
Right. Andrew, Leslie, is it just worth getting it corrected?
We'll
on?
get a new plan.
I figured as much. That's,
Thank you.
Yeah.
At the
Thanks.
HBC, we see the site plans, and we tell them to put the houses on the site plan, so we see this kind of stuff all the time.
Oh,
This-
I imagine you do.
Yeah.
So I'll
Is,
make a motion to approve with the corrected site plans.
okay, and do I hear a second?
Second.
Yep. Discussion on the issue? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Next thing before us is,
I want to bring up one other thing.
yes,
On that same application?
No, things in general.
in general.
I was wondering if we could consider having another condition, that the area between the edge of the traveled way and the lot line be kept free of obstructions while we're given these, so we don't have those boulders and big rocks and stuff.
You talk about approach.
Encroachments.
I mean, it's,
But you're talking about in general, right?
In general,
when we have
For
a
everybody.
chance to get it on a second.
we have a chance to get it on second dwellings.
Yeah.
If we made that a condition, that it would be
right.
complying to the encroachment policy,
So let's.
I think it's a good opportunity.
I think you've still got 3 other applicants before you. I'm a little concerned just inserting it right at this juncture in time.
That right now.
Okay.
So, but let me just finish what I'm going to say, which I think let's just talk at our next meeting and put it on as a policy level decision so we can have the discussion. It'll be out in the public venue and, you know, anyone wishing to...
appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. No, it's a good thought. I just think procedurally that...
No, I understand.
Yeah, good.
No arguments.
So I'm just going to ask staff to make sure that gets onto our next agenda. Thanks. All right, so Scott M. Straw, which is 17 Boulevard, go ahead.
There's a typo, number 2.
Yes.
Driveway be cleared free of vegetation,
Yep.
not feet of vegetation.
Okay.
It's spelled right.
And I've had a bunch of questions at the HCC level because of the hardscaping jurisdiction that the HCC has on number 1. A lot of people seem to be confused as to whether they have to go, if they have an apron, because their driveway goes into the road layout, like everybody's attached to the road layout.
Right.
They're all confused as to whether it's, because we've had this discussion, whether it's 10 feet from the edge of pavement of the traveled way, or is it 10 more feet and then another 20 feet to get into their property, from the property line 10 feet. I've been telling them 10 feet from the edge of pavement.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Unless they're farther away, and I said, then you guys gotta connect it to your driveway. You can't have a piece of dirt in between the end of your property line and the beginning of the 10-foot apron. So I've told them it's 10 feet from the pavement back,
Right.
or as far as back as you need to connect to your driveway, correct?
It's either 10 feet from the edge of the roadway pavement, or if there happens to be a bike path,
Yeah.
then it's 10 feet behind the bike path as well. So you would
Okay.
go from the road to the bike path, 10 feet behind the bike path.
Can we in this, because I'm getting these questions almost daily at the moment with all the new houses and construction going on. Is there any way in number 1 to be a little bit more specific by saying from edge of the pavement of the traveled way? Because I'm getting multiple 10 feet at the HCC. And I'm like, you don't have to go 30 feet, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead,
And it's
Ann.
getting very confusing.
That's exactly what the bylaw says. It says the apron shall extend across the driveway, have a minimum depth of 10 feet behind the edge of pavement.
Yeah.
So
But that's
we've,
not here.
You know what? It's in the bylaw.
Yeah, but
Let's be-
some person who doesn't know what the bylaw says, I'm just saying, just add one more phrase. Because most people don't look any further if you've got a private home like my
Yes. I think
secondary
that's a
dwelling.
real valid
You're
point.
not going to know.
Yeah.
You're not going to look at the bylaw. That minute they go near the zoning bylaw, they're like freaked out.
So we're just doing a bunch of things here at this point without people really looking at anything.
No, I'm just saying
There you go.
add one more sentence and we're fine.
I'm a little troubled by that one.
But
you
that's
know?
what the bylaw says, Barry.
So great. So
We're cutting off half the bylaw.
Yeah, but no, we're not.
People don't know what we're talking about 90%
Yeah,
of the
which
time.
which people
The people that are coming in on their own,
from and
like
where-
this one.
I don't hear anything through this board about any questions. So what
And I'll
board
keep
is
getting the damn questions, and I'm sick of it, because I don't know what to tell them half the time, because I haven't looked at it yet.
then?
So can we
that's-
just simply add that one more sentence from the bylaw
yes.
when we do it?
Yes.
There, end of story.
Barry, do you
Then
have
maybe I'll
a
get one less phone call
hope,
a day.
hope on the
I know.
horizon here?
Eleanor.
If I might point out, condition number 1 states, in accordance with the provisions of the Nantucket zoning bylaw, section 139, 20.1 B2D.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're not, a rudimentary person is not going to look it up. That's all I want, is that one other half of the sentence. That's
You
all I
know,
want. Andrew said it was fine. I'm going there. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm really concerned about the simplification that's being interjected into here at this point.
That's not
And
simplification.
I am. It
That's
is.
elaboration.
I respectfully disagree.
Well,
Linda,
I've asked
in
for it. Andrew
principle.
said I can have it. It lessens the confusing.
I think-
it lessens the confusion from where that 10-foot's supposed to start, because most people think it's property
because
line.
Linda, because you know what, it's totally bloody ridiculous at this point, and I think we're just going to give in because you're going to badger it until we're all
You
dead.
betcha.
Can I interject a little?
And
on this?
that's really just a special way to run
You've
things.
been talking for an hour. Just give me 2 seconds. Because Andrew, I actually asked Andrew a question today about this, not this application, but this issue of the road, of the aprons being built up to the width of the traveled way. And in a lot of cases, and I know that everybody has seen this, they use the Belgian blocks, which is the typical thing now. And if using, I think staff, since we've asked you to bring back something for Joe's thing about the rocks, This is a similar issue, what I'm about to say. If people put Belgian blocks right up to the pavement and we have plans to widen the road, improve the road, like Boulevard, we may want the owner to put a little asphalt and put the blocks back a little bit so that we're not coming up on it with the grinding machine in 2 years and hitting Belgian block. Because it's no different than when they put the berms in, like the one on 141 Cliff, which is out in the traveled way for the water to get down the little thing there.
Yep.
When people put curbing out into the road a little bit when they're not really supposed to. So I think some of these things, like Boulevard, we know what's going to happen to Boulevard. I mean, the whole world knows. Maybe these people don't, but something's going to happen out there. And it's not going to be the same width that it is right now. I don't even know what they're going to put the block up to. It's garbage.
Right.
So, anyway, okay.
So, in this
That's
one,
all. This is
right.
another little titty bit thing.
Yeah. So I am going to say one thing to you. In this particular decision, you're going to have your way about it, but when it comes to the global view at this point, that'll be part of the policy level decision that will be discussed by this board at the next meeting. I don't expect you to be halfway in to these decisions, then implementing changes halfway in. It's a okay, but I'm going to drop the subject, and you've heard my ruling on it. It's a policy level decision at the next meeting.
No, I agree.
And if you want to do it at this for this particular applicant, go right ahead.
Thanks, staff.
I'll make a motion, they know what to do. I'll make a motion to approve with the technical correction in number 2, and with the addition of that extra language, whatever it is, Andrew, about from the edge of pavement. It's very simple, and I think we need to be more explicit. That's my motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Where am I going? Oh.
Next thing before us is Terrence J. Watterson and Jacqueline Boucher Watterson, 33.5 Vesper Lane. Board members,
I didn't quite get this one.
and what's your question?
This was a subdivided lot, correct?
Yes.
When did this get subdivided?
It is a minimum size lot in the particular district that it's in. So I don't know exactly when, but it's the requirements. So.
This isn't on the dirt part, right? This is on the paved part before you get to Quaker? Is that how close we are?
Yes.
So it's not on the other side.
No, this is Vesper.
Oh, Vesper. What am I
Oh.
saying? Vesper.
You're thinking Vesper.
Yeah, I just know there's a road just beyond it. I would assume that's Cato or something.
It's near Cato.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I know this lot. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
where are we with this, board members?
Again, I'm going to make a motion. Is there free of vegetation. Good. I'm going to make a motion to approve with the added language again of from the edge of pavement.
Okay. Do I hear a second? Motion is made and seconded for discussion.
Oh, this is TJ's. Yeah.
For discussion, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Last thing before us is K225 LLC, 3 Brewster Road. Board members, is there any discussion on this?
This is dirt.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve
Okay, and do I hear a second?
per staff recommendation.
Mr. Chairman?
Hold on.
I have
Sorry.
one additional condition to add.
Yes, ma'am.
That the applicant abandon the existing driveway.
Yes.
Landscape zone.
I'll make
Okay.
that motion that the applicant abandon the existing driveway.
Okay, so if we're all clear on that then, that motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you. Next thing you have before you is a tertiary dwelling. There's a request for withdrawal from Lisa Tony at 5C Pine Tree Road.
Withdrawal.
Yep,
Motion to allow the withdrawal without prejudice.
thank you. Do I hear a second? Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, Ayes have it unanimously.
Mr.
Previous
Chairman,
plans.
could I
Yes.
just give you a brief explanation about why that, just so you know, there's
Yes.
that moving from the two-story to a two-family to a three-family involved a number of building code changes that made that quite restrictive. So, right.
Thank you. Thanks, I appreciate it. Okay, previous plans, 2105, Nantucket Properties 140 and 42, Nogadere Farm Road. There's a modification to the deed restriction. Leslie, Andrew,
Mr.
do you
Chairman,
have-
this has been carrying forward for several meetings. We recommend that it be continued to the next meeting as well.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to continue Nantucket Properties 1, oh, that's right, I know what this is, to the next meeting in September 14th.
great. And do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. 6889, Dolphin Court subdivision, legal documents, recommendation to staff.
Mr. Chairman, these were submitted last week. I'm unclear what the exact modification is. I didn't have an opportunity to speak with the attorney today. I was on vacation. So I think we should continue this to the next meeting.
I know what the modification is because it had to come back.
Okay.
Part of it had to come to the HDC, but I'll make a motion to
Motion to
continue it to September
14th.
14th.
And do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. 6968 Ellens Way.
Mr.
This is-
Chairman?
Yes,
There are several outstanding issues with this subdivision.
correct.
I would recommend that the planning board release all of the lots except for 19 and 20. Those would be the last two remaining buildable lots under the covenant
Okay.
and would have more than enough value to secure the completion of the remaining requirements.
I'll make a motion to release lots 10 through 13, 18, 21, 29, and 30, and not 19 and 20.
Okay, that motion's made, and do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. 6986 Catch-a-Lot subdivision. Outstanding items and lot release, Leslie.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the Limburgs are here to
Hi.
speak with you about this application or this request, but before they speak, just by way of background, the
Yes, ma'am.
Catch-a-Lot subdivision was approved by the planning board several years ago. I
Right.
can't remember how many, and the original developer went into foreclosure. It was approved in 2006. And a lot of the infrastructure improvements were not completed. The bank did work on getting some information to complete those, however, they didn't make any progress to my knowledge. There are a lot of infrastructure improvements like paving and fixing sidewalks and curbing and drainage and that kind of thing, but then there are also easements that were never put into place. There are some drainage easements and pedestrian easements that have not been completed. So while I think they're here to talk with you about whether or not you would entertain a performance security, unless they're coming forward with a lot of information about the cost of that, I think that you should maybe not make a decision tonight. We'll hear what they've put together.
Yep. To staff?
Is the reason why they're asking for some of the releases with the performance bond, I assume you've taken it over, is so you can get capital? They have one house on the corner, so they can get capital in order to do the improvements to the road? Is that sort of why we're here?
Why don't we hear from the applicant?
They'll have to speak with you, but there's only one lot subject to the covenant, and it's the lot that they are interested in purchasing.
Yeah, so go ahead, whoever.
Sure. I'm Erin Carson.
Hi.
Hi. My husband and I currently live on Evergreen Way, but we are looking to purchase 6 Catch-a-Lot, which is in fact the last unreleased lot in the subdivision, currently bank-owned. And we are excited at the prospect of raising our family with our 2 young boys on a quiet cul-de-sac. We understand that there are items on the planning board's decision that have not been addressed yet, and my husband and I are more than willing to address those items relative to, Mr. Pesci's list of items, and to put up money until those items have been addressed. Our major concern is that there are items that require the participation, the cooperation of other existing owners within the subdivision. So what we sort of propose in an effort to complete the subdivision, to make it look the way it's supposed to look, nice and pretty with the finished sidewalk, et cetera, was to kind of divide the outstanding items into two categories. Those items that we can address without the cooperation and participation of the other homeowners, the landscaping, there's a few small paving things, those items that we put up money for. And then we'd ask that a separate category was sort of created for those items that would require the cooperation and participation of the other homeowners. The easements relative to the drainage, the pedestrian easement, there's a utility easement. We'd put money up for that as well, and we'd ask for sort of an extension for those items and hope that you'd release the lot when we complete those infrastructure items, the items that we can handle, and then we'd put up money, and you'd give us some time to release. Give us some time to address again those items. I'm probably so I'm a little nervous,
okay.
But so I'm not sure if that's clear. But John can help me better describe what we're looking
Mr.
for
Brescher,
here.
go ahead.
Is that kind of clear?
No, go ahead. Did you have anything you wanted to add first before?
No, just for the record, Attorney John Brescher representing the Carsons in this matter. No, I think that pretty much sums it up. The idea is that in exchange for putting up the money, the lot would be released, and my client would be on the hook for finishing the outstanding items for the subdivision. And within those outstanding items, we'd like to break it up into two categories. One being the actual physical improvements that need to be done from Mr. Pesci's punch list, and the other being the outstanding legal documents, which I believe are just two easements. Certainly the infrastructure items, those can be under my client's control. No problem, they can do that. But as she said, needing the signatures of the other homeowners and perhaps of their banks may take longer than anticipated, which is why we'd like to separate the two. And I think really what we're here for is to see conceptually if the board is on board with this, and then we can go back and determine really what we're looking at in terms of cost and time, and sort of get if this is the direction that you're inclined to go in, we can come back with a more detailed proposal and say, okay, well, this is what we think we can do in this time, and we think it's going to cost this much, so this is what we would put up for the bond under these two categories.
Okay. Yep.
Erin, have you been able to talk to the other, I know a lot of them in there, have you been able to talk to everybody else to see if they're willing to do this with you?
In terms of the other homeowners?
Because the subdivider is certainly not doing it.
Sure.
Yeah, the other homeowners on Catch-A-Lot, are they willing to put into this fund?
I haven't sought them out, to be honest. We've been given a very small window to do our due diligence with the bank, and they're not really giving us. I don't really feel like we've had the opportunity to do that. I've spoken to Mr. Bracken. I've spoken to Mr. Brandon about this infrastructure improvements, and again, my husband and I are willing to absorb the cost of those.
Because it's substantial, because the drainage is non-existent, the bike path, the walkway
The
is
drainage is
non-existent.
non-existent?
It really hasn't all been finished to the satisfaction of the staff, so there's a lot of stuff to go, and I'm just worried that that's going to be, $100,000, $200,000 still left.
Yeah, let's hear from staff, because the thing we don't have before us is the list of what has to happen.
Right, and remember, we're here to discuss the concept, and that's what the concept.
Correct.
I think it makes all the sense in the world to divide them into the two
Absolutely.
categories. The cost estimate for the physical changes is basically it's 120%. So it's 100% of the estimated cost plus a contingency that is put up, and then that can be, as the different projects are done, that can be released. So
How much are you suggesting?
we don't have that information.
Okay, we have
That's just
nothing
the
yet.
step one.
We have not even a ballpark yet.
I don't know
Okay.
if they do.
I've heard so many different things, to be honest. And I actually have the audit report in front of me, and I'm really concerned that you mentioned the drainage wasn't even in place, because that's completely new to me. I saw that it was existing, it just wasn't recorded, the easement. And that's huge.
Because it just looks like they did the rough strip, and that's really all I've seen lately.
But I think really
do
what
it?
needs to happen here is
Okay.
that this is conceptual for us to figure
in
out
bad shape.
whether we want you to kind of go ahead or not.
Okay.
But clearly at this point, what we don't have is the exact list of everything, and that's kind of what needs to happen between, I think, now and our next meeting. If we're going to move ahead, and I'm going to defer to staff, I believe it would be, but go ahead.
It is, and there has been inspections to date. The final drainage needs an inspection. It needs the easement in order to work. So those are it has been included. It just needs to be double checked. So, and again, it's up to the applicant to give us a list of those costs.
Right.
Mr. Pesci will look at those costs and say that he is comfortable with them or not. And there's a contingency included. So in case, unanticipated things are discovered, it's covered. So that's how that's dealt with. What's a little bit different is, how do we deal with the issues beyond the applicant's control?
Right.
So obviously, I think in that case, we need to be a little bit more generous with the time to give them more time to get that together. And the costs there, might involve, we might have to ask other boards that have the ability to take these things to do it. So I don't know what your cost structure is on how you're estimating that, but that's sort of what we would need to factor in, is the cost to acquire those things from people who are not being cooperative.
And I think
I'm in
that's-
favor of the concept, so.
All right, but this one almost sounds like it's worth continuing.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
by all means. And
there's not an actual decision.
That's
I think
correct.
Right.
if the board is favorable to the concept, and I think ultimately the board wants all of this subdivision needs to be cleaned up. There's outstanding issues.
Yep.
There's an applicant before you that's willing to do that. I
Right.
think that's a good thing, a brave thing. A specific proposal should follow. It would be at your next meeting,
And
I would think.
my question to you is are all the lots in the subdivision sold, or are there still lots floating in that subdivision?
They're all released,
They're all released?
except for this one.
Except for this one. So it's really performance issues with the neighbors to get these things accomplished.
Or she's putting the money up herself.
Yeah, I know, but all right.
And again, that was our hope, was that you would divide the two,
Yeah.
basically, because the items that we're willing to pick up at our cost are those tangible items. You'll notice the landscaping and those items. The ones that you want to actually see are the ones that we're looking for more time on. So, and just so I understand, so we need to look at, are we looking at just the punch list in terms of unfinished items and getting a cost in conjunction with the planning board decision, or what? Like what specifically, or what, is it a piece of paper that just has, dollar signs next to each item?
Go ahead, Leslie.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's two documents, and I think I gave them both to you, or to your dad, actually. There's a punch list from Ed Pesci that has more of the tangible infrastructure items. Then within the planning board decision, there are other conditions that have to be met, which those, things include some of the easements that they have to do, some of the, homeowners association stuff, that kind of thing. And I don't have the notes here right now. I could get them ready for the next packet, but, there's quite a few things that need to be done. And, I'm glad that they're coming forward and they're willing to do it. But the board needs to, I guess, think about how that may need to be structured for the things that they cannot control that the board required.
Mr. Marklinger.
I was going to say, if there's no homeowners association yet? We want one, right?
It was a requirement of the decision,
So-
but I don't know what the status of it is because of the foreclosure.
What my thoughts were was if we rescinded the subdivision or threatened to, it might make the people be forthcoming to do the homeowners association, give the easements, and kind of clear up the whole subdivision.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
But
if I
I'm
may.
fine with the concept.
I think there's some due diligence that we need to do about what are the specifics of the outstanding legal documents as well as the tangible items. And then when we can put a dollar figure, we can certainly work with staff and come back to you. But again, I think tonight we're just looking for conceptually, is this something the board is in favor of?
Sure, and I think we'll be looking towards staff about what's it going to take to get the rest of the subdivision and get people religious about what needs to happen in there. As Mr. Marklinger said, that may be one of the many mechanisms that we can implement to get it done. Well,
Because there are people that already own these lots that are year-round people. And I'm not willing to rescind the subdivision when it's already fee simple and they already.
Yeah,
all
but,
out.
and that's something that will get discussed over the course of the next month or two. Go ahead, Mr.
Well, Mr. Chairman, beyond rescinding it, there's some other
Sure.
approvals that the board can withhold until this is corrected.
And that's-
like additional second dwellings and
Okay.
other things until, ultimately, it's in everyone's interest to cooperate and get this
Right.
subdivision. I think the bank hasn't really been very responsible here. Of course, they're not willing to do anything, and they're, trying to push everything out the door. But ultimately, it's in every owner's interest in there to participate here. So, and ultimately, we want to see that, this subdivision structured like all of the ones. We want the homeowners association functioning, and we do want the easements followed through on. And I think some of them are in the roadway. Isn't that right, John?
Correct.
So it's a matter of
correct.
getting the roadway transferred to the homeowners association, right? Is that one of the
I
things?
believe so. I'll need to check through the documents to see what all has been done, because
Okay.
I believe there's a utility easement on record and
Okay.
whatnot. But again, that's part of our due diligence.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to put this over to September with you guys
No.
working with staff.
No.
I'm not doing anything with it today.
Hold on. Yes.
Just so I understand, conceptually, you will consider releasing the lot if some of the conditions have been met, not all, in terms of the not all being those that require participation by the existing homeowners? Or is it really all or none here?
Let me try to make a stab at this,
Okay.
and Andrew, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong in the process. I think we're all kind of trying to figure out what are the things that finally need to be done, okay, and that's the first thing that needs to happen. What is the outstanding set of issues that'll be checked off by Pesce? The second thing is, we appreciate the fact that you're willing to come forward and maybe go above and beyond what you would typically have to encounter with this. That's the second thing we need to hear from you about what you want to do. I think as a board, this is where we're turning to staff to see what mechanisms we as a board can put in place to maybe not just help you a little bit with that, but also how do we get the subdivision completed? And that, Mr. Markinger had one of many possible methodologies for dealing with that, but that's what we need that exploration for. So that there's really the three things. And I understand for you, this is just, does the board tonight feel as though those three things, those three wheels need to be put in motion?
Mr. Chairman, I just
Yeah.
want you all to understand, the decision, item 10 on the decision says, the applicant may at any time request release of any or all lots by posting a performance security for 120% of the estimated cost of the completion of the project.
Right.
So so the answer is yes, the lot can be released once 120% of the completion of the cost is posted. So we have our standard costs, which are the nuts and bolts, driveway aprons and other things that we can put a cost to. Then there's the other, maybe less tangible things that we have to put some cost to, which is what effort is involved to get the remaining easements. Now, if everyone cooperates, that could be done fairly quickly, and that's settled and closed. If not, then it's something that the board's going to have to manage. So, or there may need to be a modification of the subdivision to allow at least the intent to move forward. And that's another option that's available, is that if there's some modification that needs to be made, I see that, there's a requirement for a path between lot 3 and 4. And is that one of the lots that we're talking about?
It is, yes. We're interested in lot 3, yes.
Okay, so if lot 4 refuses to allow the path on them, the path might need to be relocated to lot 3.
Sure.
So there's ways to again, get to the intent that might require some modification.
But I think what they're asking is, are we in favor of the concept of releasing the lot with a performance bond? Personally, I am. And then they asked if they could create 2 lists, things that can get done really quickly that she's going to do now, and then the more substantive things, which is the list that you guys have to come up with. And I'm in favor of the 2 lists. Obviously, it has to be fleshed out, but I'm in favor of the whole concept that you're presenting at the moment. You?
I'm down with it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. McLaughlin, any thoughts here? Pro or con? Pro or con this, or?
No comment.
All right, well, you've got 4 board members that I think are willing to say, let's try to see what we can make
I
happen
mean, this
here.
isn't something that happens that often.
Right.
It's kind of,
This is
you know what I mean?
rare.
I'm trying to think of the last time.
Right.
I
Well,
can't think of one right now.
But
I'd ask the board to think about, well, what's the alternative here? There's
Right.
an unbuildable
Yeah.
lot at the end of this road, and there's nothing is getting done.
And that's where all the
So I
junk
think,
got done.
Right,
I
and
think we
here's-
want to see it done.
right, and here's an opportunity to get the lot built and also maybe get some things done that would just be sitting on the sidelines otherwise.
It's a
So,
win-win here.
Have you talked to Costin?
It's all good.
Have you talked to Costin? Because they just bought that lot there
Yes.
with the new house on it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure that
And I've
he
spoken
would
to some
agree.
of the existing homeowners, and everyone appears to be cooperative.
Good.
So,
Okay.
again, everybody, it is a win-win, I think, and that everybody wants to see this subdivision.
Fleshed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we need to continue this, or are we just
No.
discussing?
No,
No, this
they're
is after.
they're going to come back in, right?
Okay.
right. So does that help?
I mean,
Good. Okay. Looks like we'll be seeing you again in the not too far future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Good luck.
Truly. Next thing is 7084 Arrowhead Drive subdivision and discussion on the modification. Leslie?
Mr. Chairman, the applicants are requesting just a technical modification to the Arrowhead Drive subdivision. The grading plan that was approved originally basically showed a slope on the lots abutting Toscana that rendered some of the lots unbuildable. No one really picked up on that. I mean, the planning board approved a 65-lot buildable subdivision. So they have worked with Ed Pesci to revise the grade
God bless you.
back
Is it
there. It's a little bit more steep, but it does work. Ed has signed off on it. But he requests that they make some really minor modifications to the plan, which would be to label the topo lines and to label the lots. So we recommend that you vote to accept this, technical amendment.
So moved.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye, aye.
Yeah, okay, thank you. 73.
Well, the plan could be puffed up a little more. Lot numbers, for example, et cetera.
We've got lot numbers because of HCCC's lot numbers.
And that was part of Mr. Pesci's
Oh,
recommendation,
okay,
to
okay.
include lot numbers.
Include it.
Okay.
Because we asked for it.
Thank you. 7342 Pilgrim Road, final roadway as-built plan review and escrow release.
Mr.
I don't have it.
Chairman, we recommend approval of this subject to just the final sign-off from Mr. Pesci.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Okay.
It's not really about moving forward. Is there a rule that you can't cut the asphalt in a town road for 3 years when a private developer puts it in? Because I've got a question about from the developer next door to this.
There's a general bylaw about cutting the asphalt. I think it's within 5 years, but it's only on public ways. Is that right?
But is it?
Andrew's going to look it up.
But wasn't it? When I read it, I took it to mean public ways built by the town, not the extension of a road built by the developer.
Wait for Andrew.
I mean, there's
Right.
there's a difference.
Yeah.
We don't need to hold things up for
We're
that.
gonna do-
but,
Okay. So we'll get back to you on
Yeah,
that.
that's
Okay.
fine.
So on this, you just need us to move ahead with this. And
Yeah, I'm fine
subject to
with-
Pesh-
I'm fine
to
with that.
Pesci's
Approved
fine.
subject to the final sign-off.
So moved, and then you release the escrow in office? Yeah.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. 7437 Goose Cove. This is a Form J lot releases. Leslie?
And
Please.
I'm going to apologize to Don Bracken for not talking with him ahead of time. The applicant is requesting release of the last 2 lots from the subdivision. The planning board's currently holding $150,000 in an escrow. That was for the first 2 lots that were requested because not a lot of work had been done. At this point, you'll see from the Pesci report that's in your packet, there's still a lot of work to be done. And I would only recommend that 1 of the 2 lots be released.
Okay. Mr. Bracken, hi.
We agree. There should have been more work done prior to the Mr. Pesci's report. We'd like 890 released, please.
890?
So you want to release 890?
Yes.
Okay.
889 will be the last lot in the subdivision.
Okay.
Just so you know, it should be paved hopefully by next week.
I'll make a motion to release 890.
Second.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Thank you. 7491, John Adams, final roadway as-built plan review and escrow release.
Recommend release.
Motion to approve.
And do I hear a second? Motion's now made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Okay, preliminary plans, White Elephant is continued till 9/14. On sketch plans, Dana Troxel is continued to 9/14.
Withdrawal of Theodate without prejudice.
Okay, and that motion is now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. You have a few things from the ZBA. Is there anything you want to discuss with this or give recommendations toward?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
there are 2 applications that I would like to recommend the planning board support.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll start with the easiest one, which is 2615 48 Center Street. Once the planning board, once town meeting approved a rezoning of the CDT district, and then once the waiver of parking and loading was approved by town meeting, it rendered a lot of the special permits that had been issued by the ZBA no longer necessary. This is one of those.
Which building is this one?
Yeah, what is it?
I forget what's
It's not the 401.
48, but what's in the building? It's an antique store and kind of a strange cross between apartments and some kind of guest room.
Oh, it's on the left side.
Oh,
Not really
Left
clear.
side, next to Rhoda Wyman's building. Is that it?
Anyway, so they don't need relief anymore. They're asking the ZBA to rescind the permit. The ZBA has been supportive of that.
Okay.
And I think the planning board
I'll make a
should as
motion
well.
to support 2615 48 Center Street.
And do I hear a second? Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
What's
ayes
the more
have it.
difficult one?
All right. The other one
One
is
is-
number 2515, Bonita Bar LLC,
Mm-hmm.
1 Chen's Way. You may know this property as the Island Kitchen or the former hen house property. They're seeking a variance to encroach into the side yard setback. And this is kind of an interesting application because their side yard is really what everyone perceives to be the front yard.
Okay.
So if it was truly the front yard, it would conform to the MyPod maximum setback of 5 feet, but it's actually their side yard. There's a strip of land between the property and Chen's Way, which causes this to be the side, not the front. And I think their proposal, which is to either cover the existing patio or enclose it, is consistent with the MyPod. It's consistent with the setback requirement in the MyPod. This is just a very uniquely shaped property, and I think it does meet the criteria for a variance.
Where they're
which
from,
is the
I'll
shape.
elaborate on this because I've been over there with them trying to fix this. The HDC approved, they had that little porch in front. The HDC approved a new patio in front so they could have, forward seating outside because so many people just hang out trying to get in. So they're going to put seats out front. And we approved the porch roof extending the width of the patio, because right now the porch roof is half the length and half the width of the patio. And they don't own the parking directly in front of it. That parking actually belongs to what used to be the bamboo. So everybody thought that was the front yard, but actually the front yard is the parking lot on the right. Go figure. There's a piece over there that gives them the frontage. So the whole thing is totally messed up. They didn't realize it. They went in with the plans from the HDC, got the building department, issued the permit, and now they can't get the CO on that because it's in violation with the roof. They want to put the roof over it. Now it's in violation of, now what's the side yard? It's the screwiest lot. The whole thing's been screwy from the beginning. The ZBA's been involved for probably 25 years when it became not a duplex and went into a restaurant. And between that and the bamboo, the parking has always been a real problem over there, and it depends on who owns what restaurant, if they get along or not. So I fully think we ought to flesh out the support because of the unique. You can do it on soil shape and topography, and you can do it on topography of structure and the shape of the lot and the particulars of the lot for a variance. So what I'd like to do is make a little bit more of an intense support from the planning board, listing those reasons why the variance should be granted. Does that make sense?
It does.
Go ahead.
If I could add, the planning board was supportive of this porch patio deck
Right.
concept through a modification to their special permit. And their proposal is consistent with the planning objectives within the Mid-Island Area Plan, which isn't always something that the ZBA looks at. I mean, they're more concerned with the technical aspects and not necessarily the bigger picture planning things. So I think that would be of value to point out to them.
But you have soil shape and topography, and I'd like to go ahead and just support the topographical and the shape issues of that situation so they have something to go on. Clearly, it's not a soil issue. So that's my motion.
All right, so just for the record at this point, I do work next door to them, and this is something I'd like to flesh out with staff a little bit more personally. So I'm going to abstain from making a decision with you at this point, and because I'm not feeling like I've necessarily got all the appropriate facts in place. But your motion is appropriate.
Yeah, I made the motion.
And do I hear and the motion's now made and seconded for discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
And
That's a
one
4-0
abstention.
with my abstention. Thank you.
Okay. That's it for those?
That's it for those, which brings us to other business.
No, did we do 76 Cliff Road?
76 Cliff Road. No.
Those we did.
Those. She's
I'm
only
sorry,
picking out,
sorry.
and that's why I
I'll
asked
make
you
a
which-
motion that the rest of them are not a planning concern.
Okay, and do I hear a second?
Sorry.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Land court orders, land court plans, and termination of subdivision, July 17th, 2015. Andrew, Leslie?
That's just in there for your information.
Yeah.
So-
All right, so there's really nothing to talk about with that.
Yeah.
But you do have the Attorney General's report from 2015 ATM.
And they signed off already?
Yes.
And I
Boy, they're
think the
moving fast.
report is pretty comprehensive, but I don't know if there's things you want to add above and beyond.
Well, I'm glad the helium balloon thing held up.
Yeah.
Dumb, dumb, dumb.
I agree.
Writes another article for removal.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
I think
Let's stick within the purview of our planning board, though.
the main issue is that we may need to revisit the adult. There's a case that cited the adult uses may need to be. We may need to remove the standards that we've relied on. That's sort of a. We will be contacting town council to look at that based on the suggestion. It is a standard that has. That has been in place for some time. However, there's a recent case from Mendon that. So we'll actually get you the case, but it may be the standards, and if you read it, it talks about other businesses have secondary effects that aren't subject to the same separation. So that's the issue. So we may have to refine that at the next town meeting.
Good.
So otherwise it's good. All of the other bylaw changes were approved.
Okay. One last thing.
One last thing I have
Well, that'll make two things then,
Okay.
because
I
the
thought, it was
discussion...
one, I thought we were all going to have one last thing.
Oh, no, the next thing on your agenda at this point, which I cannot afford to bypass any further, is there is a joint meeting coming up with the Board of Selectmen that we're trying to schedule. And from this board, I'd like to know what concerns you have or what would need to bring forward at this point. Andrew, Leslie, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts beyond that at this juncture. Let me just
Technical, though. It wasn't,
let's
it
be a little
wasn't all of
careful.
us and all of the Board of Selectmen. When we were
Right.
there that night, it was just you and me and their
But just-
chairman and their vice chairman, and the same thing with the HDC,
Right.
which I covered 2 of those spots, and the vice chair of the HDC. Wasn't that just that little, is this the Bobby work group thing again?
That will...
Okay, so it's just you and I that have to worry about the
But
timing.
let's be very clear at this point. We went before the MP and EDC and tried to flesh out among the entire membership. Just because you and I are the representatives to it doesn't mean that we need to hear from the rest of our board on this stuff, including staff. So just as we were gracious with the MP and EDC, I'm going to be just as gracious with this board.
Well, I'm just saying, is that the meeting that we're talking about?
That's the meeting that will
Okay.
ultimately
Okay.
come out of this at this point. But I do think we need to turn to our entire board to kind of get some stuff here. And I know we've had discussion at the NP and EDC too among a few of us. So, Andrew, Leslie, do you have any thoughts here before I turn it over to my board?
Well, I think planning board related issues, specifically the warrant article discussion, is probably the most important. I think that, we've had an ongoing discussion back and forth about, is the Board of Selectmen putting the articles in as a courtesy because the planning board is requesting them, or are they somehow saying that they support them by putting them in?
Or they're not going to put them in.
Well, right, and we haven't really come to that yet. Or do we need to look at another way to file them through the citizen process, like the CPC does?
Correct.
So that's one of the, I've looked at some other town bylaws and, other town practices, and usually the Board of Selectmen puts articles in for their boards. It says, Board of Selectmen for the planning board. So again, I think that's certainly a topic that we need clarification on. I think that we've heard some comments from them about last-minute articles, and the most last-minute articles were submitted by them this past town meeting. As you remember, the board and you all struggled to come up with recommendations. You actually recommended against them, and in fact, they weren't voted. So, I think that should be a two-way street in terms of if there's going to be zoning articles, we need to hear about them early. You've already had a discussion about articles already, and we're in the process of drafting articles now, which is months earlier than usual. But I think that's probably the most important planning board related. A secondary issue that comes up, I think, with them is, when we schedule public hearings and they receive our agenda, I think they should comment. They should send if they have concerns about the applications that we're considering. We need their input early while the public hearing is open.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the conditions we've put in where public facilities are involved, where public roads are being altered and everything else, we've included, I think you may remember this in decisions, that if they refuse to look at these things, then it doesn't affect the overall special permit. But maybe there needs to be some improved communication on some of those issues instead of after the fact complaining. So
I think we need to be ready. If they're going to play the games again, then I think, because we're starting so early, we have a pretty good handle on where we're going. There's always going to be something coming up. But I think we need to be ready with them informed. Let's go and get the 10 signatures or whatever it is and have them ready to go. Obviously, the areas that we're talking about, Badlands and Boulevard, easy enough to get the signatures. So we have them ready to go on our own in case this happens, because it's the third week of November, right before Thanksgiving. So I think we have to pick and choose which ones we think we want to farm out to people to get signatures and be ready to file. Because we'll have a pretty good idea, hopefully, unless they sandbag us again, we'll have a pretty good idea if they're going to support us, what we put in, or if they're going to not allow us to put some in because they were controversial.
Well, I will let the board know, I mean, we've already been contacted by several citizens that were included in articles last year, and they are pursuing citizen-based resubmission of those articles. So, and I think you all, as a board, have had a discussion that maybe in the future you're going to be more, I guess, more careful about what specific articles you're sponsoring and which ones you're going to, say we want citizens to at least take the lead. So there's been, there are a couple articles that citizens I know are pursuing on their own right now. But again, I guess there's some overall policy issues to think about, whether you want to include the Board of Selectmen or whether you want to follow a different course.
Process, to quote Glowacki, process.
Is there any? Go ahead. You look like.
Me? Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, it sounds like in the discussion, we got to get the level of cooperation up a little bit, because we're saying things like, if they sandbag us again, or
They've been doing that.
if they, I'm not saying they didn't, but I'm sure when they're having their meeting, they're saying,
No.
The planning board, blah, blah. No?
No, I meant him. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Him. He's in my ear.
Involve them early in the process, that may head that off.
Yeah.
I agree.
I was thinking maybe like spaghetti dinner or something, or some social event, Oh, that works in business. That's,
I think though, what Andrew's talking about, I didn't know that this was being brought up.
Is that a Chicago style spaghetti dinner?
Yeah. Chicago style.
Wherever we meet.
Give your warnings out.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that the controversy over Article 53 dovetailing into all the other articles except the tertiary dwelling, because that's what we're talking about. It was education. It was outreach. It was, I think that just by the 40B and that whole neighborhood learned the hard way of what that article really meant for them. And I think that it takes a little while for people to absorb this I call down zone. I don't know what it really is. Is it really up, down zone? And so I think we should just keep doing what we're doing. I think we need to have somebody to deal with the social media issue. That's more of a problem than anything else, in my opinion. Gary.
What's that?
That's what gets us. Because we don't have this Facebook staff member, that's putting out information that's factual.
Well, we don't have a political arm.
Well, whatever. I don't know if I'd call it political. I think it's just an education process that is beyond us as far as, staff and things.
Because there were a couple of websites that everybody, a small, very vocal group
There are.
on, that were completely misleading,
Hundreds of
misrepresenting,
people.
and deliberately lying about the facts. So Andrew and I have talked about this before, about something that just puts out, this is the article, this is the explanation for the article ahead of time, because Andrew does a great job of putting that stuff in the back of the warrant. But everybody's so attached to the web and Facebook pages and all that stuff. And then we've got someone else who works for the town running her own run and gun on something with a lot of misinformation. We need to sort of control the message, which means that we're very dispassionate. This is the article, this is what the result is, this is what it means. These are how many lots are created. That's it. And move from there. I don't want to hear about crime getting increased on Denver.
Mr. Lowell has the floor, though, so please.
No. The sewer article stuff that was just in the paper 2 weeks ago, all RC2, all Bartlett Road, never got put in. That's like the meat and potatoes of everything that we have done, what Andrew's done, what Leslie's done, up zoning out there, the R10 in the 3M, the R10L in the, where he lives in Mass. But then looking at the other side of the pond, my comment, lug 2. I don't think we should waver from the way we do it. I don't think we should not include the selectmen, because that just creates
I agree. I agree with that 100%.
I think it's just an education. And And once everybody figures it out, I think we'll eventually get to downzoning for Lot 1 eventually. I believe we will.
So that's what's going on, guys.
I mean,
Do you, yeah, well, hang on before you...
there's more to it than that with this joint meeting, but I think there's a lot of traction to the bike safety and fixing sidewalks, and I think that things are going to move forward with a little bit of that stuff as well.
Do you guys have anything else?
Okay.
John, if you do that one more time, just because you want to go,
No,
we're in the. This is a very. I'm actually. You did this to me about 3 minutes ago, and I'm a little.
Oh, I didn't.
Because we're having a discussion, John,
Okay.
and this is really critical for us. So I'm a little surprised. You know, yeah.
I wasn't able to attend town meeting for personal reasons, but is there any 2 or 3 sentences can actually describe to me what happened?
We got burned.
We
Three
can have the
words.
discussion afterwards. I think
Okay.
it would be germane.
No, I'll talk to somebody about it. Thanks.
But it.
But there was a lot of misinformation disseminated, and the people that were in favor of it outnumbered the ones who spoke against it. But and then Toby got up and precluded any conversation by calling the question when everybody over on our section had their hands up. There was a lot of stuff that went on. The people that were in favor of it were not called on. Some of them are a little bit more reticent about speaking in public. I know the guys in front of me were, and they finally said, we got to say something. And they were not called on. And so it was a confluence, perfect storm of how we got burned. But a lot of how we got burned started long before we walked in the room. And that's where the negativity and the misinformation and the screaming and yelling and calling us all names and all this other crime stuff, all that started, 2 months before we ever walked in the town meeting room. We didn't have control of the message, and we didn't have control of the information. And by the time people got in the room at town meeting to vote, they'd already made up their mind based on all this stuff that went on before, and they didn't bother to read. A lot of them didn't read what Andrew and Leslie had prepared about what the articles meant. And those of us who were in favor of them, we never got to speak. I had a whole thing listed out there for the Badlands, but none of us ever got to speak. So I think it has to be approached a little differently this year, but we've seen it. We know what we're going to get. So now we have to come up with a strategy to head it off at the pass, basically.
All right, and okay, thank you. And we still should have a talk, you and I. Okay. Leslie, I'm going to let you go ahead because I want to kind of summate this, and I'm a little afraid what direction the train is now rolling down.
I'm hoping to redirect the train onto the positive tracks.
Thank you, because you and I are way on the same page.
Remind everyone of all of the positive things that came out of town meeting. Like, yes, what you all are talking about mainly involves Article 53 and some of the LUG to LUG1 rezonings that didn't pass. But a lot of positive things passed. We phased out the LC district completely, which was a goal of the master plan. The accessory apartment definition was changed. The tertiary dwelling was approved. There were rezonings in Mizzenmast and some other areas to implement the R10 limited district and the R5 limited district. And we had, I think, about 35 zoning articles, and most of those passed in accordance with the planning board recommendation. So even though there were a few things that caused a lot of discussion and, were a little bit unfortunate maybe, there was a lot more positive than negative. It just wasn't as loud.
But the one good thing is
can I have the floor because can I have the floor, please?
You didn't pay attention to the rest of
Can I have the floor, please? Thank you. What's I understand that these types of conflicts are happen all over the place, but you know what? Here's a unique opportunity that's being presented to us to actually sit down and have some constructive dialogue. It's something I've been pushing for with the Board of Selectmen for years. And believe me, I'm appreciative of Bobby DaCosta taking that and beginning to move forward with it. So I think we do need to have these discussions, but I don't want to put everything into such a negative light that it shuts down either, because we do need to have these things. And I think that there are definitely some things we need to have serious discussions about. the concept of there's abundant planning board articles, which I think sometimes comes to their attention because they're also dealing with you guys on real estate articles, on acquisitions, on easements. So maybe it isn't the plethora of, or the abundance of planning board articles. It's everything put together at this point. But if they want to proceed on that track as well, too, I think we need to also try to solicit their support to try to get a land use planner in, okay? That has to happen. If they want this abundance of materials, one, they've got to get it out of their head that these are all separate things. They don't all just become planning board articles. And the second thing is we need the ability to have staff to be able to deal with that. And that's where we need that level of support from them as well, too. I think we need their support when we start talking about things like the FinCom and how the FinCom interacts with us. They appoint that board. So, you know, and some of the things that go on in the background are, I don't have to articulate. But that's where we need their help with that as well, too. We need their help with these public venue items, like with Facebook, and the fact that someone actually created their own artificial town meeting. We're not the implementing body for dealing with that. But if I were on the Board of Selectmen, I would have been asking town council, how do I shut this down rapidly? Because but whatever means necessary to deal with those kind of issues about misrepresentation in town government, to think someone can actually create their own online town meeting. It wasn't we oppose this article. It was we have our own online town meeting. Now let's oppose certain articles and cherry pick. The Board of Selectmen should be the ones who should be all over that. And I respectfully disagree because you know what? I don't think they tried sincerely.
They did ask town council. And
I hate to say it, I think you had 2 or 3 Board of Selectmen members who were pushing in the background for that to happen, and I think you can evidence that by virtue of looking at the postings that are in there. Mr. Lowell's right about the sewer article thing as well, too. So those are the kind of things I think I want you to think about before we get there as well. This is a unique opportunity, like I said, to have constructive dialogue on both sides. So if there's other things that you kind of think of after we walk out of here, I mean, I'd love to know. But definitely make sure Andrew and Leslie know as well, too.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can I just say
Yeah.
one thing?
Yeah.
Because we have Joe, who's a surveyor.
Yeah.
We have John now, that's a real estate person.
Right.
And this is important because having people that are professional in the private sector with some of the things that kind of involve us.
Get on there.
Yeah. Whatever. Okay.
It's okay.
One of the biggest things that defeated those, I call it 18-hole golf course to 9-hole golf course, which is all we were really trying to do. It's still a gigantic lot, lug 1, is the value. Statements were made by people very, have a lot of influence saying, we're getting people rich by downzoning, making people rich. The FinCom letter about the infrastructure of Article 53, what it's costing us. Meanwhile, when Bartlett Road was dirt and 3M was already in, we didn't put sewer in when it was dirt. Now we're doing it adjusted for inflation, Joe. What does that cost now? I mean, it's ridiculous. So when you talk about what the town didn't do and what it's costing, all I do is look at that Bartlett Road issue out there with the no sewer at all past Mizumas is unbelievable, okay? So there are little nuggets of information that get said in a public venue like town meeting. It's not a public hearing. We can't stand up and talk like some people were allowed to talk an awful lot, but it's very hard to talk. When Leslie just mentioned what we did with the LC, all I can think about is what we lost on North Water Street, and that woman's going to come in with a special permit, by the way, whatchamacallit, one of those rooming houses. And grassland. So, but I think that if we could get information about land value so we can show the public that a lug 2 and a lug 1 lot is really worth the same money if it's in the same area. They're not worth, it's not like you're doubling the value of people's land instantaneously by downzoning. So, and maybe we can, that's the other thing that was said at town meeting. We were basically, people were convinced that we were making everybody millionaires on South Shore Road and the airport.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what to say. I mean, that's what people thought. Meanwhile, we've had RC2 since 1972 on Bartlett Road. I guess everybody over there is a millionaire. That's all.
No, because Mr. Marklinger has something for us.
No, that's true.
Oh, I thought you did. Is there any other business before us?
All right, John.
Now you can do your thing, John.
You're second.
There you go. Thank you, everyone.
No, I did have something, Barry, but